My dad, he had to pull over because he had to use the bathroom, and he was like, "Don't touch anything, just stay still." And my brother and I were just like, "I wonder what's in there. Let's open it and let's see what's inside." And so we opened this cooler. Inside of that cooler was a human heart. And as we were about to touch it, my dad started screaming. He's like, "Hey, I told you guys not to touch anything." Hello, everyone. My name is Naniece, and I'm from California. So I just want to start off by saying that Naniece is not my actual original name. I've had a little bit of identity crisis, and I've changed my name throughout the years. I feel like once I became closer to that, I stuck with this name, but it's pronounced Naniece. I'm going to start off with talking about my childhood. I was brought into this country from Mexico, so I was not originally from here, but I'm also not originally from Mexico either. After checking my DNA ancestry, it was brought to my attention that I'm actually 60% African American, 20% Spanish, and the rest of it is like Portugal and a little bit of other stuff in there, and only 6% Mexican, which is pretty interesting to me. So, from what I remember, I was about 3 years old. The day of my baptism, my mother baptized me a Catholic when I was three. I don't remember the actual event happening. I just know that there was a lot of pictures there, but I just remember the party afterwards. I know that in the pictures, my godparents, they look like these very rich people with all these chains, and they look like those back in the day drug dealers, which I'm pretty sure that's what they were. But I lived with my grandparents until I was 5 years old. My mother was really not in the picture. The memories that I have of her was visiting her, but inside of hotels, or whenever she would take us, we were always at parties. I didn't understand when I was little what those parties were. But now that I'm older, now I know that those parties were like swinger parties, and they had a bunch of us kids hanging around in the living room watching movies while the adults were doing their thing. I know also too, remembering like my mom always leaving and me always chasing after her. Uh, and my grandmother would always tell me to stop chasing her, and like I was a little girl and I just wanted my mom. And there was a certain moment where I chased her and I fell down the stairs and I ended up cracking my chin. And I still didn't learn my lesson then. I remember my mom dropping me off at daycare or preschool. And that was the very last day I ran after her, because when I ran to the other door and I ran after my mom, I opened the door and I saw my mom hugging onto a man, and they were hugging and kissing. And I was like, I couldn't understand then what that meant, but all I know is that I felt rejected and unloved and not worthy. And so at a very young age, I was already feeling void in my heart, rejection, not wanted. My dad, I don't remember him up until my fifth birthday, where my grandmother gave us to my dad. But my dad was like this guy that I just met when I'm like 5 years old. And that was when I had my first exposure to domestic violence. When we were with my dad, my mom tried to come accuse my dad of stuff, and because I had cuts on my legs. And my dad was like, I didn't do anything to her. You probably weren't watching her. They ended up getting into this fist fight. And I just remember there was a lot of blood. His shirt's ripped. There's a lot of screaming and name calling. And then the next thing I remember is my dad pushing us inside the house, because my older brother and I are trying to separate them and trying to protect my dad from her, because I don't know, that's what my gut told us to do. So then my dad pushes inside the house and tells us to stay inside the house, and he grabs his gun and he goes and starts shooting at my mom and her boyfriend, who they ended up leaving. So that was the last time I saw her. She disappeared after that. I only saw her two times after that, maybe when I was around six and then eight. But both of those times that she came around was to try to take my older brother. So my mom always tried to come and take my older brother, but she never came to see me. She never came to try to fight for me. It was always for my brother. So again, I started having more feelings of this knot in my throat, like something missing in my heart. Um, so then my mom kind of goes away, and then I'm 6 years old now. I'm in elementary. I'm in kindergarten, and I always had this ability of learning things differently. Like I could learn things really quickly. I can understand like languages and stuff like that. So I'm in kindergarten, and my teacher like speaks out to my dad, and they do these tests on me, and that's when they reveal at a very young age, and it followed me throughout all high school. I had really good grades, high GPA, but it all started at that age. So I felt special, but that special feeling was taken from me, and so was my innocence when I was 6 years old. My dad was working as a security guard, and he left us with one of his neighbors to watch us for that night. I my brother gets beat up by the neighbor's son who's 17 years old, and that boy ends up sexually assaulting me. And my brother tried to help me. My brother's only a year older than me. And so this boy, 17 years old, and he beats up my brother for trying to help me. And he tells us that if we said anything, that he was going to do what he did to me again, and he was going to beat my brother up again. So that was the day that my innocence was stolen from me. I remember feeling very lost at that age because I just couldn't understand what had just happened to me. All I know is that it hurt, and it just felt something was taken from me. And so then my dad at this age, my dad is going in and out of jail because he's continuously beating up on his girlfriend and his other girlfriends, because my dad liked to bring prostitutes around, but he had one main girlfriend, and she would always call the cops on him. But so while he's going in and out of jail, my grandmother's watching us, and my grandmother was an abusive woman, and she just wanted to discipline us all the time. And the way she would discipline us is she would hit us with belt, she would hit us with, the hangers, any like, tables, anything she could find, she would hit us with. But then I remember this is the first time that I had an experience, like a spiritual experience. I was 6 years old, and it was raining that day. There was a lot of thunder and lightning, and this old lady's like whipping on us. So we're running away from her, and my brother and I go hide underneath the bunk beds. And then lightning strikes our backyard where we used to hang our clothes on these like little hanging things back in the day. And so lightning strikes and starts a fire, and the fire starts to spread really quickly. We weren't scared of the fire, we were scared of her. And then all of a sudden, I see what appears to be an angel, but obviously back then I didn't know what it was. I just remember what it looked like. It was like this beautiful, there was flames all around it, and it had so many eyes, and it was just very majestic. And I just remember that I wanted to go to it, and I don't know if my brother could see this or not. I was just like, very stuck on what I was seeing, and then I hear a voice to tell us to get out. And I was like looking at my brother like if he could hear anything, but he has his head covered because he's like afraid. I mean, there's lightning and everything happening and thunder and the grandma over here yelling at us. So then I hear the voice again to get out. And at this point, there's already smoke, black smoke, covering the whole ceiling and everything. So when I heard the voice a second time, I pulled my brother so we could start crawling out. And by the time we crawl out enough, the firefighters are like, we found them, we found them. And they ended up rescuing us. So that was my very first spiritual experience, was seeing an angel. Now that I'm older, I understood that it was an angel, but when I was little, I didn't know what it was. And then after that, that's when I started to have visions and premonitions and discernment. I tried to tell my dad about what I was experiencing, and I would tell him about my dreams and the energies that I would feel. People would come around me, good or bad energies, and it would be like I would absorb those energies. My dad thought I was misbehaving, but I was like, no, like it's the energy that you bring around me. It kind of absorbs, and it's just like I have to like release it somehow. And he wouldn't believe me, but I felt like he would have to believe me, especially with what he had us around. But then the day he did believe me was there was a time we took a trip and we were on the highway, and I had a really strong premonition, kind of like those movies that I forgot what they're called, but it was like very vivid, and I just remember like having a feeling of goosebumps and chills and feeling very cold, and then the vision starts to happen where there's a car accident, the tires are screeching, I hear people screaming, and I hear a voice telling us to pull over, and I start to get scared, and I tell my dad, "Dad, you gotta pull over, you gotta pull over." And he's like, "What's wrong? Do you have to go to the bathroom or what?" I was like, "No, something bad's gonna happen." And he's like, "No, you need to relax." And my dad's already drinking, so he's probably freaking out. So then he actually pulls over and he's like, "What is your problem?" And I was like, "Something bad's gonna happen." And as soon as we pulled over and he opened my door to like calm me down, like, "What's wrong with you?" The cars that had just were behind us ended up crashing. And then he just like was after he shook me, he looks at me and he's like, "How did you know that was gonna happen?" And I was like, "I'm telling you that I see things and you don't believe me." And after that day, I feel like he actually did start to believe me. But then again, I would blame him because I'm like, how can you not expect these things to happen if you're exposing us to this kind of stuff? And when I say exposing us to these things, is because my dad, he practiced Santeria, like he did like spiritual demonic rituals. He would take us on camping trips like once a month to like Julian Mountain or to Rosarito in Mexico, and there they would sacrifice children, and they would eat their organs, drink their blood, and of course they made us do it too. And I hated it because I felt like I was part of that. Like they made us watch. They made us watch brother and I and all the other kids that were part of it, the children of the adults that were doing it. And I would always question myself if I was a murderer too, if bad things were gonna happen to me because I was sitting there doing nothing about it. I was always too scared to speak up, but it always felt wrong. And there was always like older women, and like there was a cousin that I had that she would always tell me what's wrong, and I was like, "This doesn't feel right." And she's like, "Don't worry, we're gonna always be spiritually protected." When I'm this age, 6, 7 years old, I don't understand what that means. And she used the term that we have sangre cruzada, and that we would always be spiritually protected, that nobody could mess with us because we are sacrificing these children to these demonic entities. And as long as we keep them satisfied, nobody on this earth can mess with us. And I was like, I didn't feel any pride in that. I just felt very down after every time we would do stuff like that. Especially because we were instructed to play with these kids to entertain them so that they wouldn't feel scared or they wouldn't know what was happening. And then, we would play with the kids, we would eat dinner with them or whatever, and then, you know, they would do what they would do, and it was hard to watch because we're little kids and it's traumatizing, and we weren't allowed to show any fear or any emotion. And I always thought that if we ever did that, that would be us next. But my dad was a criminal. He got away with a lot of things. He was like the head of security and like crossing the border and stuff like that. It was especially at the airport, like he trafficked people. He trafficked human beings. He trafficked human organs. He trafficked weapons. He trafficked drugs. There was just a lot of stuff happening. Animals too, like exotic animals. I don't know. It was very at the time we didn't really know what kind of lifestyle it is that he's living, but I know he always had money, and I know that there was always prostitutes around, and I know that there was always drugs around. I used to think that the needles that were around the house were because he was a diabetic, but now that I'm older and I went through that experience myself, now I know that my dad was probably a heroin addict. Um, but yeah, it was a lot to take in. Even like before being exposed to the kids being murdered right in front of us, we got to experience, my father transporting organs from state to state. There was actually a time where we were driving on the road and he had like a bunch of coolers. We didn't know what was inside, but he picked these coolers up from the airport, and he would put them inside of he would borrow people's cars because he would never use his personal car. And he would have all these coolers in the car. And there was a specific one that he made sure was in the front seat because he said that was a very important package that he needed to deliver. And so it's like nighttime, middle of the night, we're driving from state line to state line. And my dad, he had to pull over because he had to use the bathroom. And he was like, "Don't touch anything, just stay still." And my brother and I were just like, "I wonder what's in there. Let's open it and let's see what's inside." And so we opened this cooler. I remember the cooler was red and white, and sure enough, inside of that cooler was a human heart. And my brother and I looked because we're like, we didn't know what it was. You know, we're little, we don't know what organs are yet. But now that we grew up, we knew what it was, and we're like, well, let's touch it. Let's see what it is. And as we were about to touch it, and there was ice all around it too. My dad started screaming. He's like, "Hey, I told you guys not to touch anything." So like yeah, that's as like I said, as we get older, we start to remember like the stuff that we were exposed to and what was actually going on. But it was scary just, being but it was normalized. So, all this stuff that was happening, it was normalized, and it was scary because when they're doing these rituals, they're saying these things and they're inviting demonic entities all around, and the energy is very dark, and people look angry, and it's like you look into their eyes and there's no color into them. They look black, black, like soulless, you know. For me, like again, to me it was like the kids, they were like my age, sometimes smaller, sometimes older. And it happened like especially like when they were trafficking children, not just for the rituals, but for other purposes, like rich people paying for a kidney or a piece of liver or something that their child needs. It was like my dad tried to justify it by saying it's going to help save a life. And I'm like, so you take a life to save a life. And that's how he would help me understand that it was a good thing what they were doing. And I'm just like growing up, obviously, like I knew it wasn't good. But going back to it, like I said, we were not allowed to show any emotion or fear. I'm glad that it never got to the point where they actually made us take a child's life, but it was close to it because we were there and we were seeing as it happened. It was terrifying and traumatizing. The way my dad would teach us to not have fear or emotion is he would make my brother and I fight out of entertainment. He would make us fist fight each other for hours. His rule was whoever cried first or whoever lost would get beat up by him. We would get whipped with whatever he had on hand, whether it was a belt, a shoe, a hanger, a wire, whatever. So my brother and I would fight for hours for his entertainment, and I hated it. I would get tired. I was thirsty. I was hungry, and I was sad because I didn't want to sit there and fight my brother. At the time, my brother is older than me, but I was always bigger than him when we were smaller. Now he's taller than me. But it was scary, like to have to fight my brother all the time, to have to worry about who's gonna okay, I'm gonna get beat up this time, so you take the hit, or no, I'll take the hit this time. It was like almost an every weekend type thing. But it taught me how to fight, it taught me how to take hits, it taught me how not to cry, how not to feel anything. I became very desensitized because of this. All while this is happening, my dad's just drinking and laughing and getting entertainment out of this. And he had people over. He had people over watching us do this, and it would make me angry. And I'm like, don't cry. Like, oh my God, it sucked. I hated that my brother and I had to go through that because I never wanted to hurt. I don't like to fight. I don't like to fight. I've never liked to fight. And whenever I got into fights, I would always tell the person fighting me, like, I don't want to hurt you, because I knew that that fight would trigger the anger inside of me, which I would share later on down in this testimony, a part of that. So whenever I knew my dad was going to start drinking, I remember that I knew that I was missing something greater in my life, that there was something was calling to me, but I just didn't know what it was. And I remember there was a blue Bible that my dad had somewhere in the house, and I just remember I would pick it up and I would just grab it, and something I would hear a voice tell me to read it because I was told it was gonna save me. So I'm still like 6, 7 years old learning how to read, and I don't know what this is, what I'm reading. Like, okay, I just started flipping through the pages, and I know sometimes the Bible has like black printing, and then certain parts had red on it. So I was wondering why that was. So I just did that. Whenever I felt like I needed comfort, I would just grab that Bible, go hide behind the couch or the recliner where my dad couldn't find me, and I would just start to read the Bible. Um, and then again, like I said, my dad would take us to trips in Rosarito, and that's where a lot of paranormal stuff would happen, especially in the places they would do the sacrificing stuff. I remember the specific trip that we had. We were there like really late at night, and there was they had my brother and I sitting in the kitchen while the adults talked in the living room. And I remember when we stepped into that house, I felt this really dark, bad energy. And I told my dad, I was like, something doesn't feel right. I don't want to be here. He's like, it's all right. We're gonna be in and out. And so that was a lie because the adults talk forever. And so they just told us to be patient and to sit on the kitchen table. And so me and my brother are sitting there facing the wall, and there's this puppet of a clown hanging there. And so me and my brother are just looking at each other, and then we're like just looking around, and it got really quiet in the house, and then it felt cold. And then all of a sudden we look, and this puppet like tilts his head to the side and it smiles. And my brother and I were just like, "Did you see that?" And then he's like, "Yeah, you saw that?" And I was like, "Yeah." So then we hear like moving around, and I was like, "What is that noise?" And then we look up again at the clown, and it starts crawling. And I was like looking around the house to see if maybe somebody was pulling the strings trying to mess with us. It was just me and my brother in the kitchen, and my dad and his aunt were in the living room. There was nobody else in that house. So like we get up, we run to my dad, and we tell him what was happening, and they're laughing at us, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's the spirit of some person that we killed or whatever." And I told my dad, I was like, "That's not even funny that you guys think that it's funny that people with spirits are inside of objects. Like that's scary and creepy." And ever since then, I just had a fear for clowns because that really scared me. That really scared me. But so moving forward, my dad continued to do these like rituals. He also practiced witchcraft, and I don't know, he did some voodoo stuff. I don't really recall because I really wasn't allowed to be part of the witchcraft stuff. But his behavior got worse after his mom passed away. I remember when she passed away, she died of a diabetic coma. And I remember the week that she was dying, they told us to help take care of her. And I feel like my brother and I feel like partially responsible for her death. And I even told my husband, I was like, I feel like I am a murderer because I didn't do anything to help her. I mean, what else could we have done, right? Diabetes, it's its own disease. That last week that she was alive, her health kind of went declined, and my dad's girlfriend, his main girlfriend was telling us to help take care of her, so we had to wheel her around on this desk, like computer chair or whatever. And we would try getting her to the bathroom on time, and it never happened. So she always had accidents. And I remember, I guess her sugar had gone down. We had just came home from school, and she was like cooking in the kitchen, and she was just like staring at us, and she was trying to say something, and then she faints. And then my brother and I are looking at each other, and my dad's girlfriend is, I don't know where in the apartment property because they were the managers there. And so we go to my grandmother to see what's going on with her. And she was pointing at something. I'm guessing she was trying to ask for her diabetic medication, but we don't know. Like, again, we're 6 and 7 years old. So my brother and I just looked at each other, and we just kind of remembered everything that she did to us. And I feel like we probably could have gone to get my dad's girlfriend and asked for help, but we kind of didn't because we were not only were we scared because like she at this point she's already having a seizure. And so we're like freaking out because we don't know what to do. And we're also like my brother was like, "Well, remember what she did to us. She deserves this." And I was like, "We're not like that though. We're not that kind of people." So then I was like, "Okay, fine, I'll go get her." So I ran like down the apartment property looking for her. She finally comes up. They call the ambulance, and the ambulance finally comes. I remember like they laid her back on the couch, and they tried giving her soda, and then they put this big needle, like back in the day how things were crazy. And I remember she was foaming from her mouth, and she continued to have seizures. So at this point they ended up taking her to a hospital down the street from where we lived at, and they said that her sugar was very low, so she went into a coma. And about a week later, my dad comes home, and he didn't even say anything. I just remember I felt his energy, and I was just like, "It's okay, let's just sit here." So me, my brother, and my dad fall against the wall and sit back, and my dad just starts crying. And he's like, "I'm gonna take you guys to the hospital so you guys can say goodbye to your grandmother." I was like, "Please don't. I don't want to say goodbye to her." Like, I don't know. That lady creeped me out. She was just horrible. She did witchcraft too, so, and she was part of these rituals too. So I had nightmares about her. I had nightmares about her forever. I don't anymore, but when he takes us to the hospital to say goodbye to her, but they really didn't let us go in. We had to like there was a room with a glass on it, and I just remember like I touched the glass and I just said goodbye, Grandma. I hope you find your way to heaven. And then I just walked away from that. And my brother just looked at me. He's like, "What was that about?" And I was like, "I don't know." And that was it. She passed away. And then my dad left for a whole month to go bury her in her country. And he left us with his main girlfriend who tortured me while he was away. She did the worst, like, I don't know, this lady did not like me. She ended up making me eat soap, like dish soap with hot sauce, just to torture me. And that night after that happened, I remember I threw up all over like her favorite blanket. But I mean, you give me hot sauce and dish soap, what do you expect? So I threw up all over her blanket. The next day, she's mad because she has to clean up the mess. And so she's like, I'm gonna hit you and you're gonna take it. And I was like, I mean, I'm already getting used to getting hit. So she starts slapping me in the face. I'm a tiny little child. So she slaps me and I fall back. She picks me up by my hair and she's like, "Stop falling, you're being dramatic." She slaps me again, picks me up again. So she keeps, like, she hit me at least 50 times. And she's like, "I'm not going to stop hitting you until you stop being dramatic and stop falling because I'm not hitting you that hard." And so my face is burning at this point. Like, I can't even feel my face. My neck is hurting. And I throw up again. And she gets even more mad. So she made me clean everything up and then makes me go shower. So then after that incident, when my dad came back from his trip, she tells my dad that I was being very defiant, that I was misbehaving, that I did not listen, and that she just made me look like this horrible person. And I know that my dad was grieving still that his mom died. So I don't think that when my dad disciplined me, it was because he wanted to discipline me. He hit me with rage. My dad grabbed the belt and started hitting me with rage. He stopped when he hit me in the face. He hit me with the belt in my face, and he realized he hit me in the face, and my face just like I had the metal mark on my face, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done that. I didn't mean to do that." And then he grabs me and starts like caressing my face, and he starts singing this Mexican song, which I hate. It's because it triggers me. The song these Mexicans sing to their kids when they get hurt. It goes, "Sana, sana, colita de rana. Si no te sanas hoy, te sanará mañana." I think that's how it goes. So he sings that song to me, and I'm crying because I'm like defeated. And I told my dad, I was like, "Dad, she's lying. This is why I was threw up because she made me eat hot sauce and she made me eat soap with it." And he's like, "She did what?" And so he immediately let me go. And then he goes and he beats her up and goes to jail for that. So again, we're left alone with her and it's continued torture. She didn't let me eat sometimes. She would make me shower with very cold water, which to this day I hate showering with cold water because it triggers me and it reminds me of times that she used to make me shower with cold water. And every time my dad left us with her because he was going to jail, she would always like be abusive to me. But after that happened, he kind of like started pushing her away. He would have a lot more prostitutes come around. But then my dad also took his abuse with me a lot further. I'm already about maybe 7.5, 8 years old. And at this point, my dad starts playing this game with me where we're playing house. He says that I'm his girlfriend and he started dressing me up the way the prostitute girls would dress up. He's like, "Oh, this girl's not coming today, so you're gonna be my girlfriend today." He even taught me how to cook. He even taught me how to clean because he's like, "This is what girlfriends do." And he would teach me how to like brush my hair and stuff and how to sit or whatever and how to laugh. Like he was very specific on how he wanted me to talk and dress and whatever. And it was just a game at first, but then it went from playing pretend to him grooming me and starting to touch me. And it got to the point where he started to sexually assault me. And I was like, "This isn't fun anymore. I don't like this." And he just continued. But at this point, I didn't want to do stuff. I've always been the type of person, even to this day, that I will always challenge people. If you tell me to do something, I'll do it. But if I know that there's something in it that doesn't feel right, I'm going to challenge you. Like, "Why do you want me to do this?" Or "I'm not going to do this." So my dad didn't like that I was a challenging person. Like, he wanted me to be submissive to him, and I was not doing that. So then he took it to another level where he pulled his gun out. He pulled his gun out and he would put his gun to my head. And he would tell me if I didn't do the stuff he wanted me to do, that he was going to shoot me in the head. And that my brother would have to wake up and see me dead, and it would be my fault that my brother would be traumatized. My brothers and my sister, they're the most precious thing to me apart from my children. So I felt like I couldn't let my brother down like that or hurt him like that. So, I mean, we're already dealing with the physical abuse. So I didn't want my brother to know what my dad was doing to me, one. And two, I didn't want my brother to ever wake up to see me dead because of something I could have prevented. So he would do that, and especially like my dad, what he when he would do that is when he wanted me to perform oral sex on him, and I hated it because it wasn't something that I wanted to do, but I had to because if not, he would shoot me. And I know that at some point my dad would cry while he was drinking, and he told me he wanted to stop, that he didn't want to hurt me, that it was hard because I reminded him so much of my mom and that he loved her a lot. And then he would pull out pictures of her. Like he had an album of them when they got married. And I realized, I was like, wow, she was a beautiful woman. Because at this point, I can't remember what my mom looks like anymore. I thought she was dead. After I saw her when I was 5 years old, I didn't know where she was at. But he would pull out these pictures and tell me, you remind me of her. And this is why I have to do what I do to you. And I was like, but you don't have to. You don't have to do this, Dad. I love you. Please don't hurt me anymore. And he's like, you know what? You're right. I have to do something to make it stop. So my dad ends up cutting my hair. He pretty much left me almost bald. And he told me that I would be unattractive and that he wouldn't feel the need to do stuff to me anymore. And another reason too that he said he would do these things is because his religion told him to do it. So when we were younger, not only was he practicing Santeria, but then when he wanted to quit doing that, he wanted to become Christian, where he would take us to church, and these people would think they were casting demons out of us by hitting us in the head while they prayed. But now because we were living in Little Somalia, now at this point he's practicing. He became a Muslim, and he even had me wearing a hijab and a burqa, and he was trying to read out of the Quran. So whenever he would do things, he would say, Allah told me to do it. It's okay because Allah told me to do it. And I was like, that does not make sense. Why would God want you to hurt your children? Why would God want you to make us cry? Like, he would blame a lot of the things on his religion just to not hold himself accountable for the stuff he was doing. This sexual assault continued until I was 9 years old, because when I was 9 years old, that's when things changed. My dad hit us one day really bad, and CPS got involved and removed us from the home. And that same day, that last day that he beat us, it was the same day that I saw a demon, the demon that looked like the demon from Insidious. If anybody's ever seen that movie, scary looking demonic creature. That's what I saw. My dad was hitting us, and we're hiding underneath the table, trying to not get hit. And the demon appears to me, and he tells me, he's like, he's talking to me telepathically, and he's like pointing towards the backyard because we live right next to a freeway. And he's like, go. If you want this to stop, just walk across the highway. And I was like, why? There's a lot of cars. That's gonna hurt. He's like, just do it. It's gonna stop. Trust me. Just trust me. It'll all go away. And for a moment, I thought about it, because everything that I was dealing with my dad, like the sexual assault, the physical abuse, not having my mom, like all these prostitutes that kept coming around, like I would always ask them, can you be my mommy? Can you be my mommy? There was a specific woman that I think it was on Wednesdays. That was like a woman that would come around. I remember her name was Lucy, and she always wear this beautiful blue dress because that was what my dad wanted her to wear. And she was like my favorite of the prostitutes my dad brought over. I know it sounds horrible to say, but she would spend time with me, and she would play with my hair when I had hair, and she would hug me, and I felt safe with her. And I would ask her, can you please be my mom? And I almost told her everything. And she's like, what is it, like you're always sad, like she's like, you've changed a lot, you've become very sad. And I was like, it's because I have a secret. And I almost told her what my dad was doing to me, but then my dad walked in, and he's like, what have I told you about asking my kids questions? You're not allowed to hang out with them. And then he beat her up, and then she left. So I felt like that was my fault that she got beat up that day. I almost told her she was one of the persons that I felt safe with, because I didn't feel safe anywhere else. But that beating that my dad gave my brother and I, we went to school, and my brother, even though he covered himself up with long sleeve shirts and hoodies, it was not easy to hide anymore. He had two black eyes, bruises head to toe. When I didn't get picked up by him after school that day, I walked to his school and I saw police everywhere. And the teacher comes out of the door and she's crying. She's crying and she's like hugging me. She's like, "It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay." At this point, I'm like, I'm not sure what's happening. I'm scared. They end up putting my brother and I in the back of a cop car. And even his friends were like, "Ooh, you guys got in trouble." And we're like, "What? What's happening?" Obviously, we didn't know at the time that we were being rescued, but we thought we were in trouble because we were in the back of a cop car. But we ended up being taken to Polinsky. That's like an orphanage shelter out here in California. And it was very how do you say it, humiliating, because when we were there they made us take off all our clothes, and I felt very violated because they were taking pictures of us naked, head to toe, obviously of all the bruises. And then they separated us. They put my brother in the boy cottage and me into the girl cottage. And this was my first time being separate from my brother, which was very hard for me. I had attachment issues with him because we were always together since birth. We were there at Polinsky for quite some time, and that's when we found out my mom was still alive, and she started coming over to visit us at the Polinsky Center. She didn't look too excited to see me at all. Like, I always felt, and there's so many pictures, like brothers' birthday parties or whatever, where my mom's like hugging up on my brother, and I'm just like the person in the corner, just like forgotten. I was always the forgotten person. And she was always happy to see my brother, and whenever she would look at me, she's like, "Oh, hi, how are you doing?" And I would always feel like, how come you're not hugging me? Like, aren't you happy to see me? Like, and in my head, I would tell myself these lies that maybe she knows that I'm tainted and now she can't love me. That's just how I felt. And so we're there at Polinsky visiting with my mom. And then my aunt, oh my God, my aunt, bless her soul. She takes us out of Polinsky. So she adopts us out of the foster system. And we're living with my aunt and everything is going so good with her. Like, I felt so loved for the first time. You know, she's taking us to, she takes us to school. She fixed my hair because it was barely growing back. And I told her I looked like a boy, and she put these cute little things on it to make me look girly. She helped me dress up nicely, you know, obviously covering up my bruises and stuff. You know, she would take us, her and my uncle were big Raider fans and Padres fans. So we would go to the Raider games, Padres games. We were always going to amusement parks. We were always doing fun stuff, things that we were never allowed to do because of the lifestyle we had with my dad. So everything felt good, you know, everything started to feel like it was falling into place. But then CPS gave my mom the opportunity to reunify with us, and my brother really wanted to go live with her, and I didn't want to separate from him, so I went and I took a chance and I left with him to go live with my mom, which was like the worst decision of my life because under her care, a lot of horrible things happened to me, and he was like my biggest abuser and my biggest hater. While I'm living with my mom, we're still dealing with CPS, doing like wraparound services, doing therapy and stuff. And then they took us to do a physical at the doctor's, and during this physical, that's when they saw evidence that I was sexually assaulted. And then immediately they shut down the medical center and they started an investigation, and they took me immediately to Children's Hospital where they started doing all these painful tests on me, like painful tests to get that evidence to convict my father. And I remember being there, like they laid me on my back, and I'm not medicated. I'm not. They're just doing everything just, you know, as it is. And I remember turning to see my mom, and I reached out my hand to her to hold her hand for comfort, for support. And she just looks at me and she just turns around and walks out of the room. So my memory of those medical exams is looking at the ceiling and seeing the light that has like this little alphabet magnet stuck to it and clouds. And I was like, I remember tears rolling down my eyes, and I was like, I'm never going to be able to count on her. Like, this was one of the most invasive things that was happening to me as a kid. All these doctors are inside of me checking this, and that. And she left me here alone. I was like starting to grow resentment towards her at this time. But it's crazy because the more she rejected me, the more I wanted her. And I hated it because I felt like she knew like that was a weakness that I had, and she would mess with me like with like a little carrot, like I'm here, but you're never gonna get me type thing. So I get these medical procedures done. They convict my father. I start going to therapy. They diagnosed me at this point with PTSD, severe depression, and borderline personality disorder. And I loved going to therapy. Therapy was great. We did a lot of play therapy to I showed the therapist like how my dad and I would play. That's how they were able to convict him. Like they wanted us to go testify against him, but we really didn't have to because of all the sessions that I had with the therapist and also because of all the medical evidence that was there, they were able to convict my dad because it was really severe and how damaged I was down there. But they were able to fix me. Obviously the therapy was working until it wasn't because sure enough, under my mom's care, I start getting molested by one of her brothers. Her youngest brother, who was only 2 years older than me, started to touch me. And I didn't say or do anything about it because I felt shame. I felt dirty. I felt like it was my fault. I don't know, like, and then the way the household, our culture is, it's like they're always they put the men, the guys, like they treat them, they baby them, they nurture them, and the girls are always like the bad ones. So it was like I felt like if I said something, nobody was gonna believe me. And at the same time, I'm dealing with my mom and her boyfriend and his domestic violence. And, at this point, my brother joins a gang and I'm hanging out with my brother because, like I said, we're inseparable. I didn't join the gang. I was just hanging out with my brother. But again, my mom, instead of getting my brother in trouble, she gets me in trouble and she ends up kicking me out of the house at the age of 12. And in this in this incident where she's kicking me out, I'm homeless, nowhere to go. I end up going to the park where I get into this fight. And in this fight, I was given the opportunity to prove myself, right? Prove myself and to take out this person. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. So it was either me or them. So they ended up jumping me, started taking my clothes off and everything. And I let them. I let them because I felt from what I seen when I was little that I could never do that. I could not take somebody's life. So I get jumped. And then after that happened, I end up inside of a garage of a drug dealer who ends up trafficking me and introducing me to meth. And it was horrible. That experience, it was like I'm 12 years old. Like I had no business being with a 30-year-old man who exposed me to the drugs and used my body, like it could have been so much worse though. And I always like ask myself like why how am I still alive? Like I could have ended up but then it came to my head, I was like, am I really spiritually protected because of the stuff we did when we were little? But something else told me that's not what's protecting you. So when I was able to get away from that situation, I'm back at my mom's house, back in therapy. But then I have a cousin who passes away, and that one hurt me really bad. Like her and I were like sisters. And then around the same time, we have an aunt and a cousin who come from Mexico to the United States, and they're coming around our family. And that cousin, who's also a couple years older than me, he also starts to touch me and stuff. He didn't sexually assault me until I was 15. But when I was 12, that's when he started to like touch me and grope me and stuff. And my mom, she wasn't protecting me. She actually walked in one time when they were helping us move. She walked in on him groping my chest, and I was trying to fight him off me. And I'm angry, like, get off me, get off me. And my mom walks in and she pinches me and she tells me in Spanish, no andes de llevada. That means like stop playing around or don't be playing around or something. And I was like, but I'm not. Didn't you just see? I'm like, didn't you just see what he was doing? She's like, no, it's your fault because you shouldn't be here playing with him. And I was like, this lady is out of her mind. I have three daughters, and if I saw somebody like I'm always very vigilant about anybody around my babies. Like she did not protect me. She was more like concerned about keeping her man happy, the guy that was beating up on her all the time, while I was her personal punching bag. I'm moving forward to the age 14. I'm in middle school, and I remember walking home one day from middle school, and I'm at the corner. We lived on the second floor, and my mom's at the porch yelling, and I'm already embarrassed because she's like, "Oh, just wait till you get into the house. Just wait, just wait. You have it coming." And my neighbors, who are also my friends, were like, "Dang, what did you do?" I was like, "I did nothing." And need I remind you, I'm a GATE student and I'm a straight A student and I'm in AVID classes, I'm in advanced classes. Like I have a high GPA. I had nothing from my mom to like complain about. But she was so angry and I was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna end up bad. So I begged my friends, I was like, can you guys just please go inside your house and close your doors, close your windows, try not to hear what's happening. And they even got scared, so they ran into their house. And it's funny because, my mom's a big lady. She ran down the stairs, grabs me from my hair, and starts like beating up on me like with so much rage. And I'm just like, what are you doing? And she drags me up the stairs, starts beating up on me, throwing objects at me, whatever she could find. I remember one of those objects was her little precious moment ceramic thingies. And I was like, what is your problem? Like, stop hitting me. And she's like, pretty much said that the social worker that was assigned to us told my mom or gave her the green light that she could take my life because she gave it to me. And I was like, why would a social worker tell you that? That doesn't sound correct. So she beat me really bad that day. And I remember when I tried to make her stop because I said, if I look her into her eyes, she's going to see that I'm her daughter, that she's hurting me. And I did. I looked her straight into her eyes and I looked into her soul. She did like pull away and she was like she got scared and she stopped hitting me, but not because she felt bad. She must have something scared her. And then she was like fixing herself. She's like, clean this mess up and you better not say nothing to your brother. So she leaves to work and my little siblings were not there because they were with their dad. But I'm just sitting there in the dark with all these things next to me because she threw a bunch of stuff at me and I'm like beat up, bleeding from my lip, bleeding from my nose and I hear the phone ring. And at this point, I can't even walk because of how bad I'm hurt. So I just crawl to the phone and I answer it, and it's my brother. And he's like, hey, I'm just calling to let you know. Can you tell my mom that I'm not coming over for the weekend? I'm going to spend the weekend with my uncle. My uncle was a DJ, so he would always have my brother, my uncle, and my cousin. The uncle and cousin, the ones that were touching me. Um, they were all spending the weekend with my uncle, and I didn't say anything, and he kind of like knew something was wrong and he's like, what's wrong? And I said nothing and I just hung up the phone. And then like an hour later he pulls up with my two uncles and they just saw me and my uncle was crying and he's like, what did she do to you? And I just looked at him and I just shook my head and so he grabs me and he carries me down the stairs and puts me in the back of his car. And he's driving all over the area we live at, finding police officers, and he finally finds one at the liquor store, and he's like, hey, look at my niece. I have to save her. My sister beat her up really bad. And so he told them they're like, there's CPS involved. He said that the social worker gave her permission to hit her. Like, this is not okay. This is illegal. But then, like, the police officer was like, this is what you have to do to get your niece help. But because my uncle is undocumented, he got scared and he didn't move forward with the legal matters of it. So my mom like laughed when she found out that he tried to come and help me. She laughed and she's like, nobody's gonna save you. And there was a certain day when I was 15 years old already, and I came home and she just threw her stiletto boot at me and it hit me so hard in my leg. And at this point, I was like, I'm done. I'm done. This woman is just crazy. And at this point, I'm already having suicidal ideations. I'm already having self injurious behavior because I had so much anger and rage inside of me. And it could have ended differently. That's the thing, too. My dad taught us how to be when people like you get them before they get you. So in my head, I was like, I could have came after my mom, but I didn't because something kept me from doing that. So when she threw that stiletto at me, that's when I was like, that's it. I After she threw it, I just ran. I ran from my house like a few miles down to my friend's house, and I showed them my leg and how it was bleeding and bruised. And then they called my uncle again, and they're like, you can't let her keep going back there. So he was like, okay. He brought me back to his house, and sure enough, he was like, I'm gonna have to figure out a way to try to adopt you. Your mom has to give up her rights because, this can affect my papers or whatever. And everything was going great. I was staying there with him for about a couple of months. But then that's when my cousin, the one that was groping me, he came and spent the night at my uncle's house while I was living there. And he sexually assaulted me in the worst possible way. And I ran away after that. And I never told my uncle the reason why I left, and I was too ashamed to tell him the truth. And instead, he believes that I ran away because I was doing drugs or I ran off with a boy. I never told him what happened that that cousin did what he did, because I was the most ashamed of it, because that sexual assault was the worst than all the other ones, than what my dad did to me, and it was the most painful. And you know what's crazy is that when he was doing that, he realized, because I started crying and I begged him to stop. He stopped. And I saw him go outside and he was praying, and he was praying to the Virgin Mary. So I don't know why I'm like this, but I started to comfort him. I was like, hey, it's going to be okay. When I heard him praying, I was like, he's repenting for what he's doing to me. I cannot sit here and persecute him. God, I was like, I don't know why he did what he did to me, but forgive him. And that's when I left. But that's why I left my uncle's house, and I ended up going back to my mom's house. And again, she's like, nobody's gonna save you. Um, People are gonna see you for who you really are. And I was like, oh God, please don't let them see me for who I really am. And in my head, I'm this person that just gets used for her body, and a person that can't be loved. That's who I thought she meant. But she obviously didn't know what I was going through, because I didn't tell her. So I'm 15 years old living with my mom, and abuse continues to happen. And then she starts playing this game with me where she starts locking me out of the house, and I'm hungry and I'm trying to do my homework. And at some point, I ended up spending the weekend at one of my friend's house, because her mom was like, no, we got to figure something out. This is not okay. She's like, we're going to go to your house on Monday. We're going to get you some clothes, and we're going to talk to your mom, because what she's doing is not okay. When Monday comes around, I come to my mom's apartment and everything is gone. Our furniture is gone, everything. And I go downstairs to a neighbor's house and they're like, yeah, she moved out over the weekend. She moved out pretty quick. And she's like, matter of fact, she let me keep your stuff. And I was like, can you please give me my stuff? I need clothes. And she's like, if you don't leave here, I'm going to call the cops. Your mom told me to call the cops on you because you're dangerous. I was like, I'm not a dangerous person. Like, why would she even say that? So she threatened to call the cops on me. And she's like, yeah, I know you don't have papers. I'm going to have them deport you. And my friend's mom's like, you're undocumented? And I was like, I guess. I don't even know what that means. So then I was able to stay that night at my friend's house for a couple nights. And then I lied saying that I had somewhere to go, but I didn't. So I'm 15 and homeless, undocumented, have nowhere to go, have nowhere to eat, nowhere to sleep. I'm staying at the parks. I'm staying at the school playgrounds. It was horrible. And at this point, I'm already dating my oldest daughter's biological dad. He was Him and I trauma bonded. He was in the system too. He didn't have his parents. He was fostered by his grandmother. So he kind of understood me. We kind of understood each other. So he was there for me, and he would stay with me at the parks. He would I remember there's a specific taco shop that they would let him clean up like the tables, and then they would give us free food. That taco shop's still around, and they know my family now. But not bless that taco shop, because they really hooked us up when we had nothing to eat. So yeah, now at this point I'm with this guy. He's staying with me on the streets when he doesn't have to. And at some point he starts sneaking me into his grandma's house, and his grandma notices, and she's like, well, what's going on? And then at first he was like, oh, it's because she's pregnant. I wasn't pregnant yet, but she's like, you can't be out there when you're pregnant. Let us help you. And then I was able to stay with them. And at some point I ended up getting pregnant. So now I'm a teen parent. I'm pregnant 15. And while I'm living here with him, I started tapping into more of the stuff that I was seeing. I remember there was a certain incident where we're hanging out at the park by our school, and then it's nighttime, and we're all walking over the hill towards his house. And it's me, him, his best friend, and his best friend's girlfriend. And I'm pregnant. I'm like 7 months pregnant. And we're walking, and then we see something quickly run past us. And they saw it, and it runs twice, this way and then that way. And they all ran off. I'm pregnant, so I can't run as fast as they can. And I'm like freaking out. They ran off, and I'm like standing there, and that thing, like, it was like a little, in Spanish, they're called duendes. In English, I guess they're called gnomes. These little duende creatures. And I got scared because I saw its eyes and they were like red. And I was like, my stomach started to hurt. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, is it trying to take my baby or something? So then I started walking backwards, and then we ended up taking the long route home. And it was like something that we never talked about again because we were so scared about talking about it. And then while I was pregnant too, I remember I was in a dream. I was having sleep paralysis. While I was dreaming, during my sleep paralysis, what I dreamt was I was running in the snow, and there was a red car to my left, and it was a Grim Reaper. chasing me and it pushes me on my stomach and it starts to pull my soul through my back. And I'm like having a hard time breathing. While I'm having this dream, my daughter's dad is trying to wake me up and he's like freaking out and he told me that he saw this creature on my chest, that it had like horns on it and that it had like little red eyes and that it was like holding on to my chest and that he was struggling to wake me up. And so finally when he drags me away from that, he's screaming and he's calling his grandma and she she practiced like white magic. You would say that I don't know. I'm not into that stuff. They believe in dark magic, white magic, whatever. So when she saw that happen, she started lighting some candles and she said some kind of prayer and the thing went away. But then we started, he started noticing that there was this being that would follow me around. He said he would call it the man with the black hat. It was a shadow figure with a hat. Um, I would see it too, but I didn't really interact with it. I always thought maybe it was just like my guardian angel, but I don't know. I never really tapped into it. So around this same time, so I already have my daughter, and I remember there was an incident where my daughter's on her swing, and I'm laying on the bed, and he's like on the floor next to her, like reading a magazine, and we both happened to look at my daughter at the same time, who was sleeping and she's swinging on the swing and we saw something like grab at her face because you could see like the imprint, something grab her face and let go, and my daughter wakes up crying and she stops breathing. And I remember he starts screaming at his grandma, and I grab her and I'm trying to get her to breathe, and she starts turning purple. Oh my gosh, she was like 4 months old when this happened, and she like flips her backwards, starts hitting her in the feet, trying to get her to breathe. And at this point, they're like, "No, call the ambulance." And they call the ambulance and they come and they start doing CPR on her, and they took her to the hospital and they had her connected to these little machines because she had stopped breathing a couple times at the hospital too. And we couldn't figure out what had happened. And when we told the doctor, like, this is what happened, like, we both saw something, they're like, no, you guys need medical help. If you guys don't stop making this stuff up, we're going to have you guys checked into the hospital. So we kind of just didn't say anything anymore. But I believe something paranormal tried to grab at my daughter. And it happened multiple times where something weird would happen, like lights flickering, or it would get dark in the room, and then my daughter would start crying and she would stop breathing again. The doctor said it was just breath holding spells, but I believe it was more like something spiritual, which I believe now even more because as she got older, she would experience her and two of my other kids experienced things too. Especially in 2020, the experiences that I had, they saw it too. So I know it had nothing to do with the drugs and it had nothing to do with my mental state of mind. But yeah, so my daughter would have her breath holding spells around, here. And also around this time, so I'm 16, my daughter's already like 9 months old. I remember there was a specific dream that I had. It was a premonition that something bad was going to happen to her dad. And I remember I begged him not to go to school the next day, and he was like, I can't not go. I'm on probation because he was in and out of jail. He's gang affiliated. So I was like, okay. And I remember I prayed and I asked God to like keep him safe or whatever. And I ended up going back to sleep. And I had a dream and I heard a voice tell me, like, you need to wake up. It's happening now. And I was like, what's happening now? And then I just heard boom, boom, boom. Somebody's knocking at my door. And it's his grandma. She's like, wake up, wake up. It's so and so and so and so. They're hurt. We gotta go to their school right now. So I grab my baby. We all get in the car, and the school's not that far from where we lived. And I remember the whole ride there. I just kept seeing blood. I kept seeing blood, and my chest started to hurt, like my left side. And I was like, I can't breathe. Something isn't right. Something isn't right. We pull up to the school, and there's ambulances, news, everything, like everybody. And then I see his uncle, like he is walking around, and I'm pretty sure he was in shock because he said he didn't remember that. He's walking around, and his like intestines are hanging out, like his gut and his intestines are hanging out from the side. And I was like, where's so and so? And he's like, he's over there. And I was like, when I looked at his stomach and the blood and stuff, I was about to faint. And one of his friends caught me. And that's when I was like, I really can't breathe. And that's when they were like, oh my God, he's dying. So I turned around and that's when I saw that they were doing CPR on my daughter's dad. And he wore a white shirt to school that day, but it was red. It was covered in blood and it was all ripped up. He had blood on his, like, all over his body from head to toe. And they were cutting his clothes. You know, they were doing CPR. They were working on him, and they put him in the ambulance and they took him to the hospital. And I remember driving there, and I remember I never asked my mom for help. I remember I called her that day and I asked her. Actually, before I went to the hospital, I went to her house and I asked her, "Can you do me a favor and can you watch my daughter? Something really bad happened and I need to go to the hospital." My mom told me, if you don't come tonight by 8 p.m. to get your daughter, I'm gonna call CPS and say that you abandoned her. And I was like, why would you say that? I'm not abandoning. I'm like, I wouldn't ask you for help if it wasn't an emergency. And she's like, well, I said what I said. So I knew I was on a time limit. This was already like 2 p.m. So I get, a ride to the hospital. And I'm at the hospital and the doctors are telling me that both my daughter's dad and his uncle are in surgery. They were both went into emergency surgery, but they were in the same operating room, and that the likeliness of him surviving was not very high. So he ended up flatlining there a couple times, and he was on life support, and because he had very bad asthma. They had to have him in a special room, and he was in the ICU critically. And I remember I wanted to be there to help him, but my mom was already calling and saying that I had a certain amount of time to come get my daughter before she called CPS on me saying I abandoned her. I ended up leaving the hospital, but as soon as I knew, like I made it just in time when I knew they had moved into the room and they told me that the first 24 hours be crucial. And I wanted to be there for him, but I know that I needed to get to my daughter more than that. And so I went to go get my daughter, and my mom was like trying to lecture me, telling me that no man should ever come before my daughter. And I looked at her like, excuse me, this is really coming from you, the woman that was never in my life? Like, you kicked me out of the house like, because of the man that you're with. Like, I was angry at her for her telling me that because she made it seem like I picked my daughter's dad over my daughter when I knew that it was an emergency and I just needed her to watch her. It was just, my mom would play these mind games with me. So I picked my daughter up. I went back to the house, and my daughter's dad was struggling to recover. He got stabbed 4 times in the head and twice in the back and on the side, puncturing his lung. So his recovery was long and it was hard. It was like the hardest thing that me as a 16-year-old had to go through, and him, I'm sure, as well. But, when that happened, I was in school, so I remember I reached out to my counselor and I was like, I think I need to get evaluated because I feel like this was my fault. I saw it happening and it happened. So I went back and I got a a psychological evaluation, and that's when they diagnosed me with schizophrenia. Which I was like, I didn't say I talked to the voices. Like I don't know. I was like, whatever. That's what they diagnosed me with. But I didn't want to take the medication. They gave me medication, but I never took it. But I ended up leaving my daughter's dad because after that incident, he started drinking and he started popping pills for the pain or whatever. And his gang lifestyle became very dangerous because I got jumped with my daughter a week after that. And I'm not even from the gang. The house had drive-by shootings all the time while I was there, and we always had to go hide underneath the bed. And then I found out I was pregnant. So now I'm pregnant, and I found out I'm having twins. I'm pregnant with my daughter, and I have my daughter, and now I'm pregnant with twins. And he's not getting any better, and now he's putting hands on me. There was a specific moment where he had me in a mobile, like a little RV, like a little, and he would lock me in there. He would leave me enough food and diapers, and it was like he was just losing it. And I was able to get away because he went to jail. He went to jail for something that he did, and I asked my mom for help, and she did not help me. She ended up dropping me off in a homeless shelter full of drug addicts or recovering addicts, and gave me $20. And she said, "Good luck." And I was like, "Why can't I stay with you?" And she said, "Because I have a man and he's not gonna allow it." And I was like, "So your man is more important than your daughter and your granddaughter?" At this point, I hadn't told her I was pregnant with twins yet, but she left me there, and it was very hot. That area where I moved to, it was really hot, and I didn't know where I was at. I only had $20 on my name, and I was hungry and pregnant, so I walked like 2 miles to go get some food. And I stayed in that homeless shelter for about a year, and until I found this lady who took me in. Her I'm not gonna say her name, but she was like one of the best people on this planet. She took me and my daughter in, and I guess you could say I was in an arranged relationship with her son because he was older than me, and I never romantically loved him. It was more like I cared about him because he gave me shelter and a safe place for me and my kids to be. But his mom took really good care of us. My kids never needed anything. And while I was there living with them, I didn't know she had cancer and was in remission, but I found out through a dream because I confronted her about it. I was like, "Hey, so I had this dream." And I was very specific with the day and the time and what the description of what the doctor looked like. And she like looked at me and she told me that I was a witch because there was no way I could have known that because she never told anybody. But she told me that she did have cancer and she was in remission, but that her cancer came back. And I was scared. I was like, did I manifest it? So every time I have premonitions and things happen, I always feel bad if it's something bad. But she had cancer and I was her caregiver. I helped take care of her and she ended up passing away the same year my grandma did, 2 months apart. But while I was there living with them, and another thing too is that this lady, she's native, she's Cherokee. And so whenever it came to spiritual things, they had their own way of dealing with stuff and their own ways of praying or whatever. So like while I was staying with her, I did have some spiritual encounters. Again, I saw those little creatures, the little duendes inside of the room. Again, the voice woke me up to tell me to get my kids out. And we get out and she sees it, the guy I'm with sees the creatures. And so what she does is that she has a priest come to the house and like perform like some kind of ritual with sage and whatnot. And the priest told me straight up, he's like, "There's something following you around. Like you need to go get." I guess then I didn't know what he meant, but he said you need deliverance from something. And then he asked me if I ever practiced witchcraft, and I was like, I did not. My dad did. And then he was like, I feel like your dad sold your soul to the devil. And I was like, I don't believe he did because I feel like if anybody was gonna sell anybody, so it would have to come from me, and I never willingly did that. So it doesn't count. And he's like, that's not how it works in the spiritual realm. And I was like, well, I don't care. I don't believe in any of that. And he's like, there's something attached to you, something dark. So after that, I remember after the Duende incident, like things happen in sequence, like one thing after another. After that happened, the next door, because all his family lived in the same block and they were duplexes, like right next to each other. His cousin has a daughter who's like 15 at the time, and that girl ends up becoming possessed, and they performed an exorcism in that house. I remember like we all went over there and I didn't believe it because I was like, you guys are just lying or whatever. But when I went over there to the house, sure enough, the cousin, they had her sitting on a chair and she was she was just there sitting like this, blank stare, like her lips looked gray, she looked pale, she had dark eyes and she just looked gone. And I even tried talking to her like, "Hey girl, like what's up? How you doing? Like you want to come play with the kids or anything?" And she didn't even respond and she just starts going like this. And so they were explaining that there was going to be an exorcism being performed and they needed a few people there to pray. And I was like, well, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. I've never done this before. So we're all sitting there and it just felt like a scene from a movie. And I just remember sitting there and I hear like somebody playing with the candy wrapper in my ear, but the person that's sitting next to me is not that close. So I hear like a candy wrapper in my ear. And then the next thing that I feel is somebody pulls, and everybody saw it, like somebody grabs my thing and pulled on it like that. And then it does it a second time. And everybody's looking at me as this is happening. And I was like, oh, I'm out. And then I left. That same night, they performed the exorcism, and then everybody left. And then in the middle of the night, we hear somebody walking in the hallway, like somebody's walking in heels, but heavy heels. And we're just like, what? Is just walking up and down the hallway of the duplex. And our room is right next to the window. So the guy I'm with texts his cousin, hey, do you hear that? And everybody's like in a group chat just texting, do you guys hear that? And then all of a sudden the walking stops right next to our window. And like I feel like my heart stops and I'm just like I hold my breath. And then you hear it jump and it goes on top of the roof and it's walking on top of the roof. And his cousin's like, oh my God, it's like a creature. It has like these horns and it has these eyes and it looks like a goat. And we're just like, oh my God, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? So the lady, the guy's mom comes out And she's like, no, no, I'm calling the priest back. So everybody gets up, turns the lights on, and she starts banging with her broom. And she's like, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus to get out of my house, get away from my family. And I just remember, I'm getting the chills just remembering talking about this. I remember like she comes up to me and she says, "It's you." I'm like, "What do you mean it's me?" She's like, "It's you. They told me that it's you. Like it's trying to come get you." She's like, "You need to tell this thing that you don't want it." I was like, "Well, I don't want it. I don't know what to do." And she's like, "You have to rebuke it. You have to rebuke it." And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." Because at this point, I'm still not like really believing anything. I just know that I hear and I'm seeing these things, but me with my mental illnesses, I thought it was just in my head, but clearly they're seeing it and they're more spiritual than I am. So they start praying and, doing their own little rituals to get rid of it. And, but then I couldn't stop but think about maybe it was connected to all the rituals of when I was a child. And as I'm growing older, these demonic entities are stuck to me and it's affecting everybody around me, especially when I'm angry or in a bad state of mind. These demonic things are bigger and more stronger. And she told me that. She's like, you need to go to church. But I I didn't feel comfortable with church. Like I said, my mom was a Catholic, my dad tried being Christian, he did his satanic stuff, and then he was Muslim at some point. So it was like I was confused. I was religiously confused, and I just told her I didn't know what to believe in. So then I continued to have premonitions. I know in 2011 I had a premonition. I was pregnant and I had a dream about me losing my baby at the same. I even knew the time and it came in my hand and I knew it was a girl. And the next day I wake up and I told my mother-in-law, I was like, I have a feeling something's gonna happen. And she's like, no, 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 it's gonna be okay. I was already 4 months pregnant. And I remember I I ended up losing the baby at that time. That just like it said in my dream, I passed the baby, and I remember that my mother-in-law, I passed the baby in the toilet, and she picks it up and washes it off, and she's like, "Do you want to see what it is?" And I was like, "I already know it's a girl." And she's like, "How did you know?" And I was like, "Because I saw it in my dream." And then she's like, "Oh my God, look at her eyes." And I was like, "There's no way you can see her eyes." And she like shows me this little thing, this little baby in it's still forming, so it's like white. The eyes look white and it's just a little tiny little hand. Like it was traumatic. And I was like, "Please, I don't want to see that." And her daughter, her youngest daughter, I remember she grabs a shoebox and she grabs a little pink blanket and wraps the baby around in it. And then they're like, "We're gonna go pray. You get in the shower." And they took the baby and they went to go pray for it and they buried her. And I couldn't be part of that. I became very severely depressed after that. And I remember after that had happened, I was dealing with really bad depression and I was starting to have suicidal ideations again. And I felt enough courage. I'm 19 at this time. I felt enough courage to try to reach out to my mom and build a relationship with her by letting her know what I had gone through. So I wrote her a letter in December. I wrote her a letter letting her know what had happened in her house, how her brother, which is my uncle, and her nephew, which is my cousin, and what they did to me. And when she reached out to me, I thought, and I wrote a letter to my sister too, because my sister was always siding with her. And I wrote a letter to my older brother too, and I let him know. I was ashamed to tell him, but I told him the truth. So they invite me over to my mom's house because my brother, my sister, and my younger brother were still living at my mom's. And I thought, okay, this is good. We're gonna make progress. So I go to my mom's house and she was like mocking me. She did not believe anything that I had to say. She, in fact, called the abusers to her house and she said, so this is what she said. She said that you did this. Is this true or not? They denied it. They denied it. And I looked at them like, are you serious? Like, I've been holding you guys a secret all this time and you guys can't even be honest with my mom. And they're like, we don't know what you're talking about. And then they leave. And I remember my brother followed my uncle and he's like, hey, where are you going? He's like, is it true what she said? And he's like, no, she's not lying, but I can't tell your mom the truth. Do you know what that's gonna do to my life? And my brother's like, do you know what it's done to her life? And in that moment, like my mom, he didn't tell my mom the truth, but he told my brother the truth. And my mom just walks away laughing and she's like, you're just lying. You just want attention. You probably liked it, just like you like what your dad did to you." And I was like, "What do you mean I like what my dad did to me?" She's like, "Yeah, because if you didn't like what your dad did to you, you wouldn't tell him you loved me when you loved him when you would go to school." I was like, I was a little girl and I didn't know what he was doing was wrong to me. Just because people hurt me doesn't mean I'm gonna stop loving them. And I don't understand why I'm like that. I'm like, you hurt me too, and I still love you. Is there something wrong with me? And she's like, there's everything wrong with you, and you just want to start problems. So then I remember I started crying so bad. Like I had such an emotional breakdown. My brother like took me home and I was just crying and shaking so bad that I peed on myself. And he was like, "It's okay, don't worry about it." It's like I cried and he cried with me and he was like, "I'm so sorry that these things happened to you. I wish you would have told me." And I was like, "I don't know why I didn't tell anybody." I'm like, "You heard what my uncle said. If anybody finds out." My uncle's a dad. He's a dad now and he would still do stuff to me even when he became a dad. And if his girlfriend found out, like if anybody finds out, it's gonna ruin people's lives. He's like, "But it ruined your life." And I was like, my life over everyone else's. I'm stronger. I've been dealing with it, you know. I don't think he can. So after that, again, like I said, this happens in December. My birthday is December 28th. So my grandmother calls me and invites me to eat. She takes me to Olive Garden and I'm thinking we're having a nice dinner and she brings out the cake. And then as we're walking to the car, she sits me down and she's like, "I need you to pull over before you take me to the house. I need to talk to you about something." And I was like, "Okay, what's up?" So then my grandmother tells me that she found out about the letter and she found out about her son and what he did to me. She's like, "I get that he did that, but it's too late to do anything about it now. What do you want to do? Do you want to call the cops? Do you want to have him arrested? You're going to take your cousin's dad away from him? You want his wife to find out?" And I was like, my point of people finding out wasn't to get people in trouble. I just want people to understand my pain. And she's like, "Well, this is what we're going to do. I need you, if anybody finds out," she's like, you cannot let your grandfather find out about this at all. Or your uncle, my uncle, the DJ, the one that tried to adopt me. She's like, "If by any chance they find anything out, this is what I need you to do. I need you to lie and I need you to tell them it was all your cousin, that your uncle had nothing to do with it. Because if they find out what your uncle did, they're going to kill him." And I was like, "So you want me to lie and blame it on just one person?" I'm like, "They both should be held accountable, not just this guy." And she's like, "Well, it'll be easier to believe that your cousin did it because he did it to somebody else." And that's when I found out that he had done it to somebody else in my family. And I was like, "What?" So I'm like, this whole time I'm protecting him because I thought he regretted what he did to me. But then I found out he did it to somebody else who was a lot younger than me. That broke my heart. But it happened before he did it to me. He did it to her. I still felt bad. But anyway, so my grandmother tells me to lie. I'm like upset because my grandmother and my grandfather are the ones that have been helping raise me, and I respected them and loved them so much. And when she did this, I kind of started to back away from my family. My premonitions continued to happen, but the worst premonition that happened was in 2012. During 2012, this is the crazy thing about it too. In 2012, I started having these visions that something happens in my family where we're all crying and we're all mourning somebody. And this happened for 6 months. I was like, it's not going to be that big of a deal. We can get through it because I thought it was my grandmother dying because she was just diagnosed with cancer. And that's what I thought it was. So while I'm having these visions, I am also going to this church that's called World Mission Society Church of God. And this church, I later felt it was like a cult or something because they were very structured, very how we had to dress. The women had to always be dressed like business like. We always had to be wearing a veil. They segregated the women and the men separately. They believed in God the Mother. They believed in the second coming of Christ had already happened and that he was from Korea or something like that, and his name was An San-hon. And they did this prayer in Korean. And so here I am like reading this prayer and I'm like not I felt like I was saying a spell because I don't even know what I'm saying, but I was trying to find anything to fill that void of all this trauma that I was going through and dealing with my family making me lie. And I was just trying to find God. But clearly I didn't find it in this religion because in 2012, like I said, after my vision started to happen, that's when my uncle committed suicide. And well, I don't think he did. There's another podcast I shared about this situation where I don't believe he committed suicide. I feel like he was set up. but it was all over the news and it was very local here. And they said that my uncle killed my cousins and then committed suicide, but I don't think that's what happened. When I went to my cousins, it was hard enough as it was because there was so much media happening around, so we couldn't really like keep it between the family. And then my uncle's viewing, it was very hard for me when I walked halfway to his to see his body. I broke down. I couldn't make it there. I couldn't make it there. I couldn't say goodbye. I had to leave. And what did I do? I went to the church. I went to the church and it was on a Tuesday. On Tuesday they have service. They practice the Sabbath day and then they the third day, which was Tuesday. I went and I interrupted their service. I didn't try to interrupt them, but I asked for the deaconess to come out because I needed to talk to somebody. And I told her, she's like, well, what's going on? It must be something really important that you had to interrupt me. And I was like, look, this is what just happened in my family. I was just at the viewing. I couldn't even say goodbye to my uncle. I need a lot of support right now. And she straight up just looked at me and told me, she's like, oh, well, there's nothing to really say. You know, he's going to hell for what he did. And I was like, excuse me? I couldn't believe she had just said that. And who knows, maybe so. I don't know. But I don't think those were the right words that she should have said to me. And I ended up leaving. And ever since then, I was like, F this, F that. I don't believe in this. I don't believe. I was mad. I was angry at God. I was like, God, why? All these things that were happening, and now you take my uncle from me, and you take my cousins. Like, did he like? I had all these questions in my head. Like, did he really kill himself? Did he really kill them? Did he suffer? Did he? I was just so angry, and I started to get really lost. I started to drink, and I started to do drugs again. Um, and I made the most compulsive decision ever. I left the guy I was with his mom that were taking care of me and my kids because I was like, I don't love you anyways. Like, and his mom told me, she's like, you deserve better than my son. And I was like, okay, so I'm leaving him. I'm gonna do my own thing. And so I did my own thing, but then I decided I'm gonna marry my best friend, which was not a good choice to make. You know, I thought, oh, we're best friends. This is gonna work out. But at the end of the day, I was just trying to fill a void that he couldn't fill because the only person that could fill that void is Jesus. But I ended up marrying my best friend. I left the church. I'm far away from my faith as it is. I'm struggling with alcoholism. I'm told that I have stage 3 liver disease. And obviously, I can't get on the organ list because of my alcoholism. So then I lose my grandmother. Then I lose my ex mother in law. They die 2 months within each other. And then I'm separating from my, this all happened in a span of 5 years. I'm separating from my best friend. So I'm going through it. And I remember just seeking attention or just seeking validation. And I remember that specific night, I was like, somebody's going to pay attention to me. And I was angry and I drank so bad and I did a big old line of coke and I got into an argument with the guy that gave us a ride. And I just remember walking down the street and feeling a lot of chest pain. And then I collapsed. And that was the first time that I died. I overdosed on alcohol and cocaine. And I remember as I was dying, it felt peaceful. I didn't feel any pain anymore, and I felt like I was in the void. I was in the void, and I felt like God was around, but He was not close enough to me, and that was because it wasn't my time. And everything stood still, though. Time stood still. There was no sense of time, and it was just I don't know how to explain it. It was just a peaceful sensation, but I knew it was not my time yet, so that's why I couldn't reach God because it wasn't my time. So I'm brought back to life, and I ended up separating completely from my ex-husband, and I started to go do my own thing, but then this is 2018. So 2017 I overdosed. 2018 I separate from him, but he ends up finding out that I started dating someone else, so he starts doing the most and CPS gets involved and they told me that and then I also found out that he was gang affiliated and part of some criminal organizations and CPS told me that it was dangerous to have my kids around that and I was like exactly that's why I'm not with him. He doesn't know where I live, he doesn't know where I work and I want to keep it like that. And they're like, no, you have to get a restraining order. And I was like, if I get a restraining order, I have to put my address down. I have to put my where I work. Like, you don't understand how these restraining orders work. You're putting me in danger. So they're like, if you don't put a restraining order against him, then we're going to take your kids away for failure of protection of your kids. And I was like, you guys don't understand what you're doing. You're going to put me in danger by making me put my address on this piece of paper. So because I didn't get the restraining order, they took my kids, my older daughter and my son away. And I lost it. I went into a dark place after my kids were removed because I knew nothing more than to be a mom. And I ended up using meth again. And the guy that I was dating, he introduced me to the needle. So now I'm shooting up meth. I graduated from smoking to shooting up. And that was the hardest addiction to kick because I mean, I saw this stuff in movies and I never in my life imagined that I would be doing that, like shooting up, trying to find my vein, like not sleeping, not eating. Man, I started seeing scary stuff. Like I started seeing like shadow people. I started experiencing really severe psychosis. I started seeing like spaceships. I started seeing creatures. I started seeing obviously with him because of the lifestyle we had, there was like incubus and succubus demons, and I say both of them because I know there's one for each male and female, but because he was bisexual and there was a lot of we had a lot of like orgies in the like where we were staying at. Like we did a lot of bad stuff. Like my mother at some point reached out to me and said, "Is he prostituting you?" And I was like, "No," because she ended up finding out that there was a lot of sexual activities happening in my apartment, and she tried to lecture me on how I should be fighting for my kids, and instead of taking it like advice, I was not receptive to it because I was like, who are you to tell me what to do? This is not what you did for me. Like, you set this example for me. So, again, not me taking accountability, but blaming her and acting like a victim. It took a while for me to actually get my stuff together and take accountability. So I was blaming the whole world for what I was doing. But yeah, I was experiencing severe psychosis and seeing stuff. And I heard a voice telling me, like, you're going to see the world for what it really is. I've been trying to show you. I've been trying to show you. And I was like, what? And it was like, open your eyes, open your eyes. And I remember the guy I was dating, he would record me. Um, and I don't know if he would still have those videos, but he would record me, and then these recordings I do not remember at all. Like some demonic spirit took over me because it was not me and I was not there. And I could tell it wasn't me because my eyes, I was gone. Like there was no soul in my body. And I would talk in a very condescending tone, and my voice was even different. And I would spend time in the closet talking to myself. And the thing about it is I was like, maybe it is the drugs and we're just hearing and seeing stuff. However, while he was recording me have a conversation and I laughed, like I was joking with somebody, in the recording you can hear somebody laughing with me. And he freaked out and he threw the phone and he's like, "You're possessed. There's something here with you." But that didn't stop us from using drugs. Yeah, he manipulated me into thinking that I wanted to do stuff. And the thing about it is that a lot of his ex-girlfriends would reach out to me and warn me about him. Because a lot of the girls he was with were his victims too. They were all abused by him and they were all introduced to drugs. They all lost their kids. They all like went through a bunch of stuff. I ignored them. I was like, well, you guys are just jealous that I'm with him. However, I ended up becoming one of his victims too. He would use meth, like when he would shoot up, he would become bisexual and he would make me think that I wanted to see him do stuff, which was very traumatizing for me because he's a gang member, a big, tall gang member, all these tattoos. And when he did these drugs, he became like the female in the relationship. And there was a part where he made me hold his hand while he was being, when he was having sex with another man. And I was like, I don't want to see this. This is not what I'm into. And at some point, I was like getting tired of it because I'm like, this is not who I am. And he started doing weirder stuff. He like put a hole in the mattress and he started having sex with the mattress. And I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, no, it's a woman. It's a woman. And I was like, there's nobody there. So he's probably having sex with a spiritual demon, but it was in physical life, a mattress. And he did the same thing with the vacuum. And he just started doing things weirder and weirder. And the more I noticed things were getting weird, I tried to run away or get away from him because it started to freak me out. He started to put hands on me. And I would try to like sober up and get away from him because I didn't like what he was doing. And there was a specific part too where I was no longer being given meth. So I didn't make the shots because I didn't know how to make them. They were the ones with the experience. I would just get them and give them to myself because I knew how to shoot up. And one specific time they gave me the needle and I shoot up and I remember feeling very different. Like my chest was hurting and I couldn't breathe, and then half my body goes paralyzed. I ended up in the hospital having an ischemic stroke, and 2 weeks after I recovered, they asked me, "Are you on drugs? What are you taking?" And I was like, "I'm meth." I told them straight up, "I do meth." And they're like, "No, you're lying. We're gonna have to have you evaluated because there was a lot of heroin and fentanyl in your system." And I was like, "I don't do heroin. I don't do fentanyl. That's not my drug of choice. I don't know how I got there." And that's when I started to realize this guy's trying to kill me. He's trying to kill me. And so that's when I said, "Okay, I'm not gonna use drugs anymore. Like I'll just smoke. I won't shoot up anymore because this is dangerous." And he did it again. That was like the last time that I did it. And that's when I reached out to my brother and to my mom and I asked them to meet me at the Denny's. And I remember I reached out to my sister too and I asked them, "Hey, I need support. I want to get into rehab. I need to get better. I need to get my kids back." And then my brother had said something that really upset me. So I go back home and this was in September already. My kids were taken in March. And so I'm already like, I'm fatigued. I haven't slept. I haven't eaten anything. I'm tired. I'm seeing stuff. I'm hearing stuff. And the things that I'm seeing is getting scarier. And so I know that in my dreams, that when I die in my dreams, I wake up to this reality. So I told myself, I was like, this is probably just a nightmare. Like, this is probably just a nightmare. And so I said, I'm going to wake myself up. And sure enough, I grabbed a knife and I severed my hand and I started bleeding out. And that was my second death. I I flatlined. It was really hard for them to start me on anything because my veins were all shot out from all the drug use. Like no veins. They tried getting me in the neck and they missed. I'm bleeding through my neck. They had to use an ultrasound machine to find another one, but by this time I've already flatlined. They ended up stabilizing me, and I'm fighting for my life because now at this point I have septic blood, and I've contacted MRSA, and all the antibiotics they're giving me I'm allergic to. So I have a long list of allergies that I have because of this incident, and nothing's working. And my experience of dying this time is again similar. I'm close to God, but very far away because it's not my time. However, I'm stuck in a place where it feels just cold and quiet. There's no peace here. I didn't feel peace here. I felt like stressed. And I asked God, I was like, what is happening here? What do you want me to do? Like, I know I did a lot of bad things. I'm trying, God. I'm really trying. Like, I just don't want to be here anymore. You know better than anyone that I failed, that I already put my kids through what I went through. Like they were taken from me, God. It wasn't my fault. And God was like, I know it wasn't your fault. You need to fight. You need to fight. And so I remember having a phone call with my little brother who was in the military. He was in Korea at the time. And I heard his voice telling me, like, hey, do I have to come down to say good to my big sister? And that for me, that broke my heart because I was like, my brother is my world. Like, he's my little brother, but he was like my baby. I helped take care of him when he was a baby. Like, I was like, I can't hurt my brother like that. So then I told the guy that I was with at the time, I was like, you guys have to take me out of this hospital. I'm gonna die here. So they took me to another hospital, and that's where they were able to stabilize me. And I got better. And that's when I started to realize like I really have to get my life together. No, I can't keep messing up. However, that's when you're struggling with addiction, it doesn't just happen overnight. You want to get better, but if you're not ready, it's not gonna happen. So after that, I lost my apartment, I lost my car, I lost my job. I'm homeless. So I'm staying at an abandoned house with the guy that I'm with, and then my ex-husband's coming around and helping us because they're dealing drugs and everything from there. And then we decided to take it upon ourselves to do something crazy. We found a board and I found a blade and I ended up making a Ouija board with my hands and my blood. And we make the Ouija board and then we decided to smoke meth and play the game. So it's me, my ex-husband, and the guy that I'm with, and there's another guy there with us. And we bring up the game by introducing it with the meth. And the experience that we had with that was crazy because I know that it would have been funny if it was just one person, but we all saw it and he caught it on camera. As we start introducing the game, the house starts to shake like if there's an earthquake. After that, we start hearing a swoosh, like a swirling, like something like swirling hard. And then blue lights start to surround the house, but there's no electricity because this is an abandoned house. And so we're like, okay, maybe we're getting raided, and we start freaking out. We threw the Ouija board because we have drugs. Like we're about to get raided. We thought it was the cops, but we look outside and there's nothing out there. Everything looks dark. but it looks like it's coming from the ceiling, like there was a spaceship over us or something. So we're like, okay, no, we're tripping. Let's see what this is. So we picked the Ouija board back up and we ask if this is a good spirit. It said no. If this is a bad spirit, it said yes. And then we asked it to reveal who it was. Again, at this time, I don't know anything about spirits and demons and their names, but all I know is that this specific day it spelled out ZOZO. And then my ex-husband Googles it and he's like, oh no, we gotta close this game out. It's a bad demon. We all injured. And then sure enough, after that, he points at his phone and he's like, look, 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 look. And so then we looked at his phone to see what he was pointing at, and the guy that I'm dating, there's like a demonic figure standing behind him that's like 9 feet tall. When I asked my husband when I described to him what it looked like, he said that I described Molech, the demon. And I was like, yeah. And he showed me that demon. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly who's standing behind him. So after that, I was like, I'm not playing with this Ouija board anymore. And he kept playing with it. He took the Ouija board and took it to the cemetery and played it there. And I was like getting tired of that. I was like, I don't want this anymore. And I remember like for me, the last straw for this relationship that I was in was on Valentine's Day when he allowed a man to rape me on Valentine's Day in exchange for a needle for drugs and a phone to watch porn in. And that was my last straw because I was like, this man does not love me. He should have protected me. And I remember I was crying and my ex-husband's knocking on the door, like banging on the door, like, hey, what's going on? And he just sees me crying on the floor and he sees the guy pulling his pants on. And then they dealt with the guy and they're like, we're gonna come back and we're gonna deal with him right now. And that night, they were gonna take care of this guy I was with, but he ends up running off with me and they can't do anything to him if I'm physically there. So he got away with it. And I knew at this point, like I'm trying to like leave this guy because he's getting more and more physically aggressive. At this point, I've already been at the hospital 10 to 12 times with very bad injuries. I had like a cast, yeah, like a sling and a cast in my hand because he hit me with a metal bar and they had to open me up to drain the blood out. Um, he's hit me so many times. Like there's so many police reports at this point. And there was a specific night where during the day I had asked God for a sign. I was like, I need a sign, God. I need to get better. So give me a sign. So we go to a church where the guy I'm with decides to go smoke meth in the bathroom, and I bump into a nun who pretty much tells me that I'm pregnant and that it's gonna be a girl and that everything's gonna be okay. So then that evening, when we get back to the abandoned house, I was so sure of it that I was gonna leave him, but then my ex-husband who was gonna help me gets arrested. And I was like, he knew I was gonna leave him. I remember running into the rental that I had and locking him out, and I call the police because he's already hitting me. And he jumps on the truck and he starts hitting the windows trying to break in. And I have him on Bluetooth and I'm calling the cops and I'm telling them where I'm at. I'm like, I'm not gonna stop the car. I'm not gonna stop the car. Even if we both die, like I'm not gonna stop the car. He's trying to kill me. And so we're driving, and then he finally breaks the window, starts to get in there, starts kicking me, punching me, trying to get me to pull over. And I'm like driving and I'm kicking him back, and then he falls and he's hanging onto the door, and like I'm dragging him like 2 blocks. And I'm like telling the cops, I'm like, I'm gonna drag him, I'm gonna run him over, like he's gonna kill me or I'm gonna kill him, but somebody's gonna end up in the hospital tonight. And so he gets away. They have the helicopters and everything looking for him. He gets away. And the cops take me to the hospital that night. They saw how badly beaten I was. And I thought that was it for me. I was like, this is my rescue. But then he shows up to the hospital. The cops had left to go get some coffee or something. And I remember I wrote on a piece of paper to the nurse, my perpetrator is here with me, help. And I go to the nurse's station to give it to her. But the guy that I'm with, he comes from behind me, grabs my hand, gives me back my hand. I'm in a gown, and he's like, all right, time to go. And he walks me out of the hospital, back into the truck, and we drive away. And so at this point, I'm scared. I remember I even missed a court date, one of my court hearings for my kids. And I remember that night, I was like, God, I'm going to take accountability. Whatever comes, I'm going to take it because this is my fault. I should have done better. And I knew that I was gonna go all in to get my kids back that day, but I didn't go to court that day because I was hiding in one of the rooms of that abandoned house. And he was throwing chairs at it, trying to break cause it was a glass door. I was scared. I was so scared for my life. And he hadn't slept either because of the drug. When he finally fell asleep, when I knew he was in deep sleep, I got away. I got away and I went to my sister-in-law's house. And I thought, okay, this is it. This is it. But he found me and he kept trying to get in the night. And I was like, you can't come in here. You're not welcome. She didn't let him in. So he left. And then the following day, he had left to the hospital because she was having some stomach pain. And I was there alone. And I thought I was fine. I didn't think he was going to come back. I ended up falling asleep and he broke into the house and I woke up to him strangling me and he punched me multiple times. He had his knee on my stomach talking about, I don't want to have a stupid baby with you. He stabbed me 4 times, twice in the face. And I just remember collapsing and that was my third death. I remember collapsing, but I fought with all my might, you know. I remember I stabbed him back twice. And he got away. He got away. The cops didn't get him. Again, they had the helicopters and everybody chasing him, and he got away. I remember just collapsing and waking up in the ICU. They told me that I wasn't gonna make it, and neither was my baby because I had lost a lot of blood. But they ended up giving me 2 blood transfusions, which was difficult for me because my body was rejecting it. And I was in the hospital for a couple weeks, recovering from that. And after that, that's when I got interviewed for a program called 2911 after the verse Jeremiah 29:11. And I was accepted. I was accepted into their program and I was able to sober up. And in that program, it's a maternity home. I was able to continue my pregnancy safely, give birth to her in a safe environment. I did parenting classes, I did a DV class. I was able to do my visits for my kids and I completed my first drug treatment program through it was called McAllister out here in California. And by 2000, so all this happened in 2019. I had my daughter in 2019 and then early 2020 I got my citizenship. I had my daughter was healthy. I got my kids back. I got my apartment. Everything was going good. But then March comes around right before COVID hit. My ex-husband gets out of jail because I remember I mentioned he was arrested and he gets out and we're still legally married at this point. And we had discussed everything that had happened and he's like, that should have never happened, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, he was like, we should work on our family. And I was like, well, maybe we should give it a try. We're both sober now. We should try this out. So everything was going great. He was taking care of us and everything, but then he started acting funny. And I ended up finding out that he cheated on me with a guy. And I was dealing with a lot because, for one, like my kids, when they came back from foster care, they were being very defiant. And it was the reunification wasn't therapy had stopped because of COVID. So now we're not getting the wraparound services anymore. And I remember calling crisis numbers like, "Hey, I need help. I'm about to have a mental breakdown. I just got my kids back. They're acting like this. I'm feeling really triggered. I think I'm gonna relapse." They told me they couldn't help me because of COVID, and I was scared. I was scared, and then on top of that, I was already experiencing psychosis, and this was before I started doing drugs again. The psychosis is what triggered me to have the relapse. And I knew it wasn't just me because my kids reported stuff that they saw in the house. Like, for instance, where the heater thing is at in the nighttime, and because we had cameras too, like in the nighttime, the heater thing would open up and we would see like these weird dimensional things coming in and out of the wall. My son would wake up crying in the middle of the night and I'd run to his room to see what was going on. He would tell me that there was hands coming from the ceiling trying to grab at him. And I was like, okay, so I let him sleep in the room with his sister, which was right next to my room. And then we all ended up sleeping in the same room because my daughter started seeing stuff too. People coming out of the wall. And I was like, okay, they're starting to see stuff, so it's not just me. And then I remember me seeing like through the reflection of my window, the attic, the little door that they have on the attic. I saw it like open up and I saw like a ladder going down. And I looked through to like through my living room to see where it was at, and you can't see it. But through the reflection you could see it. So I'm able to see things through only reflections, like the mirror world or something. I don't know. So I started seeing stuff and I started tripping out. Like, I'm seeing stuff that makes no sense. I'm seeing the trees moving. I'm seeing the ceiling lifting up and I'm seeing a spaceship up there. I'm seeing like I tapped into a different dimension through the reflections. I'm able to see like signals. It was like the Matrix when you see all these numbers and codes. And then I started to see these beings who said they were the Anunnaki, and they started talking to me, and they were telling me they were harvesting humans. And I was like, what, why? Like, what's, I'm like, am I in a bad dream or something? So this was before I had relapse. And when my kids started freaking out, and now I'm freaking out, and nobody's helping us because of COVID, I was like, I ended up in a weak moment, I ended up relapsing. And in that relapse, that's when I experienced a really bad sleep paralysis experience where in my sleep paralysis, and to me, like I said, it felt real. I don't know if it was sleep paralysis or not. So I'm seeing my body being dismembered by these lasers through these beings, and they told me, "Don't worry, it's not gonna hurt." And it didn't. It didn't hurt. But just being able to visibly see what was happening to my body, I thought it hurt, but it didn't hurt. And so after my body gets dismembered, they put my body through these wood chipper, and then after that, it goes in through a conveyor belt, and it goes in through this big storage, metal storage that's burning fire. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in hell. I'm in hell because there's fire here. And I remember that it was so hot, it felt so cold. And then I remember that I'm starting to choke on my blood, and it smelled and it tastes so metallic, like copper or something. And then they keep my head. The only thing that they keep is my head, and they put it in a jar, and these 12 beings carry it, and they take it into this cargo box with all these other people. And I'm looking around, and I'm like, this is happening to other people, not just me, but it's like only people who have the spiritual gift of seeing, because the people who can't see are just going on about their lives and nothing's happening. And so these beings take us through these mountains up to the sky, and it looks like the upside down. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Stranger Things and the upside down where it looks red. That's what it looked like. It looked like red mountains, the sky, there was a spaceship, and it looked like lava or blood. And then it gets into these caves where there's a bunch of tubs with bodies, and they start putting our head connected to all these bodies. And this big hand picks up my head, and I'm like standing in the hand, my head is in it, my body transforms, like, so now my head has a completed body, and I hear a voice telling me that each version of me is going to go somewhere and it has a purpose. And I was like, I don't understand what you mean, like, what is happening? This can't be real. So like there's a version of me in different alter realities, and each of my body has a purpose. I just wasn't sure what it was. And then the hand puts me back down to my reality here, where I'm having the sleep paralysis, and I wake up, and my body's vibrating because it's like connecting, kind of like all the fibers, all my cells are connecting. I remember I feel like I'm glitching, and I was like, this doesn't feel right. And I also remember having bruises from head to toe when I woke up. And after that, I remember seeing blue orbs and lights inside of my apartment. And I was like, what is this? Like, I'm tripping. I remember I even covered up all the windows, closed the curtains, and even put tape to make sure that there was no crack of light coming from the outside. And those blue light orbs were still in my living room. So I was just frightened. And after that I was like, I can't use because it's making my psychosis really bad. I remember I was also having a lot of anger and really bad thoughts in my head, and I was scared because I was like, in my head I was thinking about my uncle, that he had committed suicide and he killed my cousins, and I was like, what if I do something like that too? I'm losing my mind. I need to get my kids out of here. I need to leave the guy that I'm with because he cheated on me, because I thought in my head I was going to kill him because he cheated on me with the guy, and I felt ultimately betrayed. So I ended up kicking him out, and I was like, he's gonna be gone. I'm gonna sober up. I was already like 2 weeks clean when this happened. And again, like I said, I had cameras in my house to capture all the paranormal stuff that was happening. And so then my ex-husband comes to my house to pick up his stuff. I allowed him to come back to pick up his stuff, and I remember a specific day where my 1-year-old is having a seizure, and it was not normal for her to have seizures. So I called our pediatrician, and I told him what was happening, and he was like, time her seizures, and if it happens again, call an ambulance and have her taken to the hospital. And sure enough, it happened again, and after that, her body went limp, and I'm doing CPR on her, and I'm calling the ambulance, and my ex-husband's like freaking out, and he's like, no, don't do that, don't do that, don't call them. And I was like, why not? Like, she needs help. And it was like he knew what was wrong with her, but he didn't want to tell me. But he also knew she was going to be okay. So I didn't listen to him. So I ended up taking my daughter to the hospital, where they ended up checking that they couldn't figure out what was wrong with her until they looked at my record, and they were like, there's one more test we have to do on your daughter. And I was like, okay, that's fine. do what you have to do. I have to find out what's wrong with her too. So they did a test on her urine, and they ended up finding out that there was methamphetamine in her system. And they started questioning me, asking me how it happened, and I was like, I don't know. So they sent me to the hospital next door, the adult hospital, where they had me drug tested, and it was negative. I was like, I'm not on drugs. I would never give my baby drugs. And they're like, well, there's drugs in your body, in your baby system, and we're not gonna give your daughter back until we find out how it happened. So they took my daughter away and they took my other kids away that I had just gotten back. And I was facing possible criminal charges for child neglect and child endangerment because of the drug ingestion. And I checked myself into rehab and into a mental health treatment as well. Although I was still struggling with psychosis, and they ended up diagnosing me with schizoaffective disorder because they said it's drug induced psychosis, even though I wasn't on drugs anymore. I was having really bad PTSD. I was still seeing the trees move. I was still trying to figure out like why my baby had ingested the drug. And then because I had abandoned that apartment, I was like, I'm not going back there. I'm seeing all this scary stuff. I willingly moved into a sober living. That's during this process while I'm going to court and everything, was they were able to retrieve my cameras, and that's when they ended up finding out what really happened to my daughter and how she ingested the drug. And sure enough, it was because of my ex-husband. There was a video where I'm sleeping, and that was the day he was supposed to come get his stuff. He's in my son's room, which is next to the front door. My son's in the living room watching TV, and my baby had woken up already. And so she was crawling to him, and he's smoking the pipe, and he's blowing the smoke to her face, and then he hands her the pipe where she sucks on it. And that's how she ingested the drugs. But I don't know if he didn't think it was going to affect her or not, but it did because that's the same day she was having the seizures. However, that was put on me. And once these videos surfaced, plus there was other stuff that surfaced too on how he was also being physically abusive towards me. Because when I woke up and I had bruises head to toe, it was because of him, because I told him to leave. So they removed those charges from me, and they gave me full access to get my kids back as long as I completed a treatment and got, mental help or whatever. But like I said, I was still seeing stuff. I was seeing the spaceships. I was seeing blue orbs. I kept seeing the sky opening. I kept seeing the numbers and letters on the wall, like the Matrix. And I was like getting tired of it because I was like, if I'm not on drugs, like if there's something seriously wrong with me. And I really did have those thoughts in my head where I just wanted to end my life because I felt like all the chaos that was happening in my head, nothing can take it away unless I silenced it. But then well, no, I didn't meet because I already knew him. I reconnected with my now husband, who was also my middle school sweetheart. We started hanging out. And I remember the first day we went to go hang out at the Star of India down here in San Diego. I remember we were just hanging out and I was telling him my experiences with the stuff that I was seeing, and he was like, I believe you. I believe you. I don't think you're crazy. So for the first time in my life, I was like, okay, this guy does not think I'm crazy. He doesn't think I have mental issues. And I remember sitting there thinking, I wonder where this is gonna go. Is he just gonna be like some guy I'm dating or hooking up with? Because at this point I didn't respect myself. I was just like, every guy just wants me for sex anyway, so I might as well just enjoy it or whatever. That's what I thought in my head. However, he had other plans. He told me he was doing this thing where he for 3 months is not, masturbating or having sex with anybody, and he's like, we're gonna date, but we're not gonna be physically like physical with each other. And I first thought, I was like, oh my gosh, are you gay? Like, he was the first guy to ever reject me like that. However, it kept me very interested, and we continued to date. He knew I was staying at the sober living, and he saw that I was on the bus and the trolley, waking up like at 4 in the morning to get from my sober living to my treatment to work. And he's like, I live closer to where you go. You can come stay with me. And I wasn't so sure about it because I didn't want to live with his parents, but I was like, I need to stop being so prideful and allow people to help me. So I was like, okay, I'll go stay with you. And so when I'm staying, I only stayed at his house for 2 weeks because I saw some pretty crazy stuff in there too. For one, I saw his dead sister, which I did not know she was dead. I ended up finding out later when his mom told me that she passed away and he found her. But I saw her. I saw her. And then two, when I looked into his eyes in his mom's house, like I saw like, how can I explain? This is why I avoid making eye contact with people, because when I look into their eyes, it's kind of like Ghost Rider when he could see through their soul and see everything that they've done. I saw that with him. I had this conversation with my husband because I wasn't sure if he was going to be comfortable with me sharing these things, but he said it was fine. When I looked into his eyes, I saw his sins, like the things that he would do. And those one of those things is like his addiction. He had a porn addiction. And so I saw all the porn he was watching and all the masturbating he was doing in the room. However, I also did see things that happened in that house. He grew up in that house since he was a kid, like a baby. So I saw really bad things happening there. And that's when I started to grow some kind of weird feelings towards his family because I knew what they did to him. However, I didn't talk to him about this until recently, like just 2 weeks ago. And I was like, hey, I had these visions. I just never talked to you about it. And he literally confirmed to me that it was true. And it makes me really sad. I'm hoping that he's able to figure and process those things out in his therapy because it's not my story to tell, it's his. But I saw these things early in our relationship. So I always wondered like why God allowed me to see these things, and I felt like it was part of helping him heal because I've gone through these things. And although I never forced him to say anything to me, I felt like when he's ready to talk about these things, I'm going to be here to help him get through it because I've gone through it already myself. But another thing is that his dad to this day practices witchcraft, and from what I know, so does his sister. His mama knows about it. Like, there's just so many coincidences with my husband in my life. So my due date when I was supposed to be born was February 1st, 1990, but I came early. He was born February 1st, 1990. His dad and my dad have the same exact name. My mom and his mom share the same exact birthday. His mom's nickname and my nickname is exactly the same because there's just so many similarities with us that you can't make this stuff up. But so we're dating 2021, all this stuff is happening, and I'm doing okay. I haven't used yet, but then I found out about my grandfather having terminal cancer, and I had a weak moment where I ended up relapsing, but then I also realized in that weak moment that if I continued to use, I was gonna miss out on my losing my grandfather's last moments, and I was gonna give him that version of me that he deserved better. So, 10 days before he passed away, that's when I decided to get sober. It was the hardest thing of my life. It's still the hardest thing of my life, but I did it, and I stayed clean ever since then. And after that, I started to do EMDR therapy with psychedelic therapy. And on my second trip that I did with it, I remember that I went in there with intention, and I remember I prayed and I asked for healing and I asked for God to answer my questions. And I remember while I was in there during the EMDR, I went to these mountains to talk to God, and obviously, you can't see God, but you can feel Him. And I asked God, I was like, God, who are you? What do you want from me? I'm tired. Please just take this all away from me. Like, I want a better life. Like, I have my kids again. I'm married again. Like, God, like, what do you want from me? Who are you? And I remember a hand comes out of the clouds again, and I'm like there, like my spirit is on this hand, but not my physical body. And I just hear a voice say, I am who I am. And I was like, what is that supposed to mean? Again, at this point, I don't know anything about scripture, nothing, but that's what I heard. I am who I am. And then I came to, and I remember feeling very refreshed and enlightened, and I felt peace. And I felt like a hug, like a warm hug over me. And I felt so much love. And I remember like, it's like I changed from one moment to another. Like all this anger that I had, it was gone. I was a person with anger issues too, so I was always very reactional. Like I always had to have the last word. I always felt like if you were disrespecting me, like because of how my father raised me. But ever since that moment, and this happened in 2022, um, I I'm not angry anymore. Like I don't react when people get mad or try to fight with me. I'm just like, I'm gonna pray for you. Like you need Jesus. No, let me tell you about what Jesus did for me. And ever since that moment, so I'm like very grateful for that opportunity, that therapy that I did because it helped me connect with God. And then in 2022 that happens, and then I got married with my now husband. After our marriage, we got married on Valentine's Day. Then we got pregnant with our first son, who was born on Halloween. And then 6 months after he's born, I'm pregnant again, but I ended up having a miscarriage. But then I'm pregnant again, so now we have my daughter. I still experience psychosis and premonitions in my dreams. People who pass away, like people who are close to me and their relatives or somebody passes away, they come and say goodbye to me before they die. And I already know they died before they did. Also, like, I had an uncle who was missing from Mexico and they were looking for him. It had already been 2 weeks. And this was about a year ago. I remember the night before they found him. I had a dream, but I saw a blue orb first. And I remember in my dream, he had a lot of blood on the left side of his head, and he had a lot of blood on his body. And he showed me that he was in a hospital with yellow walls, and he was very specific with where the clock was and everything. When I woke up in the morning, I remember I texted my brother and I told him, like, I had a dream about this uncle. It doesn't make sense because we're not even that close. Um, He's like, you should reach out to his sister and let her know. And I just found the screenshots of the messages and I showed them to my husband. So I sent her a message and I told her about my dream and I told her where to look for him. And she's like, okay, we're going to do that right now. So then that was like around 8 in the morning. And so I go take a shower. I'm doing my morning routine. It's 11 a.m. and I get a message from her and she tells me, she's like, we found my brother. And I was like, where was he? And she was like, he was inside of the morgue at this hospital. And then she sent me a picture of the description and it had the yellow walls and everything. And I was like, well, that's amazing. I'm glad you found him. And then I asked her, can you tell me what the cause of his death was? And she's like, why do you want to know? And I told her, I was like, because in my dream, he had a lot of blood in his head, like he had blunt force trauma to the head. So she's like, when they do the autopsy, I'll let you know. And sure enough, they do the autopsy and the cause of his death was blunt force trauma to the head. He was murdered, but that was the cause of his death. But so now when I have my premonition, I always pray, like, because I try not to get scared of these things anymore. I try to like ask God what the purpose of it is, if I'm supposed to like help with somebody or like for instance the visions that I had about my husband and his family stuff. Um I feel like my purpose of being able to see those visions is to understand what he's going through and help walk him through the process of his own healing, only because I've gone through it and I have better understanding of it, you know. I still continue to keep in touch with the program 2911. I go talk for them at fundraisers, sometimes at churches to help raise money for their program because it's a really good program. They actually have a transitional home now for the moms after they give birth to their babies. They actually paid for my schooling for to do the SUD counseling. They paid for my books and for the actual course itself, which I'm really grateful for that. They're very supportive. I've been sober, like I said, I'm going on 5 years clean. On August 13th will be my 5 year clean date. Uh, I'm in school. Like I said, I just received my first degree, something I never thought I would do. Like I was a teen mom. I have all these kids. I didn't like respect myself. I didn't think I was gonna ever do anything with my life, but here I am, you know, like God made it happen. He made it possible. And I remember like sometimes people ask me like what makes me believe, and I always tell them it's like when you think about the big picture, God sacrificed his only son for the whole world. I'm like, God uses his chosen people because only the strong people like us can go through all these things and still stand here strong in faith because God was with us through it all. There's a song every time I play it in the car, even it doesn't matter what time of the day. Every time I listen to it, it lifts me up, but it also like gives me this feeling in my heart because it's the truth, you know. I trust in God where it says, I sought the Lord and he heard and he answered every single time. It didn't matter what I was going through. I looked up and I asked for God and God came through. Didn't matter because he always provided for me. Always. When I was homeless and had nothing to eat, there was always a roof over my head. I was always like never like starving. Like God always like came through. Like I've gone through a lot, like unimaginable things and I was able to I found Jesus more than anything. I found Jesus, you know, and that's like the best thing ever because even as a girl, I tried to find something or someone and I was religiously confused and I didn't know what I became to a point where I thought I hated God, but through everything that I've gone through and finally finding the right people, because during one of my prayers that I had, in 2019 when I asked God for a sign. I said, God, He put people in my life that are going to guide me and show me the way because I know that you have a plan for me. And sure enough, boom, there's 29:11 after the verse. And I was like, God has a plan for me. That verse comes up everywhere. And then, I have a lot of support. The church that I go to, it's called City View. They have connect groups where they have like um for couples and whatnot, for families. It's just so family pro marriage, and it's like God really put people in my life to guide me because I never had that, and it's like it came a little later. But if it didn't happen the way it happened, I wouldn't be able to do what I do today, which is help people and reach people because there's so many people out there that are going through stuff, who are broken, who are lost. My husband, he was an atheist, okay? Big atheist. And he was the type of people that be like, why are you talking to that person? That person's dirty. I don't see people like that. I see their souls. I'm not scared to go up to people. You know what I'm saying? I told you I work in a reentry facility, so I know what these people have done, but I don't see their actions. I see their souls and how pure they can be. And I know that they need help to get to where God needs them to be. We're all here for a purpose, and it's been a long, difficult journey, but I'm still here. I'm still healing, you know what I mean? Like I have my ups and my downs, but I know that God is my foundation now and that I wouldn't have made it without God. Like I trust God with everything in my life, even during the bad times.
As you were speaking, in different times of your testimony, there was things that came to mind. One of the or things that were impressed onto my mind. One of the things was Legion, your father, when you were talking about the things that he had gotten into, the Santeria, going into the becoming a Muslim, sacrificing, the child sacrificing, the eating of flesh, all of that. What the Holy Spirit impressed on me is Legion. So in the Bible, there's the story of the man who was filled with demons, and Jesus went to cast them out, and the demons obviously recognized him, and they said, "We are Legion." There was a point in time that I looked up just what Legion was because I was always hearing like 5,000 plus demons. When you look at a legion, like in the Roman, like the Roman army, it's like 12,000. So that's what I was getting from the Holy Spirit, is there were legions of demons, and what happened is when he was sexually abusing you, that gave them the right to now come after you. Not to mention the
Okay.
test with the Holy Spirit, but there I was getting that he did some rituals on his own children.
Yeah.
And then also, as you were talking, the Holy Spirit's like saying, she's a seer, she's a seer. So, and then you said it. So I was like, okay, she knows, but also children as well.
Yeah.
It's something that is your family. One of the things that I've learned is when you have when you find out like you have the different gifts that God bestows on you, a lot of times your children also have them. So, and a seer, that can go with other gifts. So it's not necessarily a one size fits all. And what I've come to notice doing these testimonies, meeting people who are operating in gifts, I operate in gifts as well myself, that they're in this in time, God is giving people multiple gifts in order to fulfill the calling that's over their life. So you might get multiple, not just a seer. Sometimes it comes with prophetic, word of knowledge, word of wisdom, discernment, the gift of faith. You'll just get whatever he bestows on you and what he decides you're going to need in order to complete your calling and what he has set for you to do. So I was getting that, but also he was saying you're not getting premonitions. What you're getting, those visions are prophetic visions. So they're not premonitions. They're being prophetically, he's allowing you to see things. So basically, like, there's a time when I was a little girl, when I was little, I would get the same things. So I would call them premonitions. They would come. So I grew up in generational witchcraft as well. My great grandmother was a practicing voodoo priestess. But what I come to find out when I accepted Jesus Christ and he came into my life, when I got saved, was that the gifts that you have in the world are really the gifts of God that have been stolen by Satan. So it's not a premonition, it's your God-given gift of having the ability that God gives you to see visions and see in the spirit. But that was always there for you. You were always meant to have those. The problem is that even though Satan doesn't know every single thing, he can tell when somebody's marked. He knows when somebody's anointed. And so what he does instantly when people are going to be born, there's only two options. He's either like, we can try to take them out now, but if that doesn't work, because I honestly believe when people are anointed, when they're chosen, God has a protection over them. So the next thing is we need to pervert the gifts. We need to pervert them
Yeah.
so that they're on our side and now they're working against God. So, and me coming out of New Age, then I believe that God works in numbers. I believe that he sets things up to benefit for his good and for the good of his children. You and your husband, I believe you're God ordained. I believe that he chose and set you two together for a reason because your husband would support you and help you on your healing path, and you would be able to support him because you have been through things that he's not ready to talk about. And so you're the perfect person for him. You're that helpmate that's going to be able to be that sounding board when he's ready. And before he even wants to speak out, just when he's ready to even speak to you and pour his heart out or cry or whatever it is he has to do for his healing, that's why you're together. Because even if you look in the Bible, it tells us the two become one. So he gave you your mate so that you two could become one and become one healed, like one healed unit. So
That's like, yeah, that's what he literally said when I told him about my visions 2 weeks ago. He said, "The moment you opened up to me and told me about all your sexual trauma, I knew then that you were the perfect person for me." And I didn't understand what he meant, and you literally just said
yeah.
the same thing he said.
So basically that's why. So it's because it takes God will take two different broken people, but when he puts them together and they truly work together, they will become one healed and formed unit. And then you guys will get deployed to do his work to help others. I came out of that world, the occult world. We've been taught it's a soulmate. It's not. It's God. He ordained this. He brought you two together because who else would know how to pick the perfect person? That, yeah, we're not, I mean, even me and my husband, we're not like, oh, we get along every day. And that's not what it is. It's the perfect helpmate to to help both of you grow because you're not only helping him, he's helping you.
Yeah, you want to know something too? We separated because we met in middle school, and after that, we lost. I thought he had died because he had a tumor, and I had heard he passed away, but he was alive this whole time. I lived right down the street from him for
Oh,
10 years. Yeah, I worked right next to his building. We went to the same parties, and we never crossed paths until
yeah.
2021.
And that's the timing of God. Like it wasn't meant for neither one of you to even pass each other in passing until that specific time that you finally met again. And it's interesting because like you have to think about it. God knows everything. He knew, he would know whether that would have worked while you were still on drugs or while you were going through certain things. It might not have been the right time. And so that's the amazing thing of having God as our father is his timing is never wrong. It's always perfect. But those were the things that as you were talking were coming through to me. And the other thing is one of the things that I tell people is when you are meant to be like part of the end time remnant, when you are going to be called to be a frontline warrior for the kingdom of God, you will have a past that has been the worst of the worst. I haven't
Yeah.
met a person yet who was like, I'm talking about, I've met some of the best and like just gung ho deliverance teams and everything. but their past, it's always painful. It's never God's did it, but what he does is he uses that for his benefit because everything that you have experienced from drug addiction to also the sexual abuse, the physical abuse, you now have the armor and the tools to go back in and help someone else. But one of my questions to you was when you were in the middle of all of this, I mean, your story was heavy. It's heavy. There's so much pain and you went through rituals, trafficking, meth. Your soul know about God that your circumstances were actually trying to convince you was a lie? So at this time, did you still have hope in God that maybe he would save you?
I feel like I knew deep down inside me I was already saved. Like I've always known I've been a child of God, but being the stubborn person that I am, I kept it's like when there's a saying that you tell God, I got this, I don't need you. That's what the whole thing of doing drugs, like I can deal with my pain on my own, but really I wasn't. Like I knew like being in a toxic relationship, I just need to feel love. But back here, I know you already are loved. God loves you. So I knew always deep down inside that I was already saved, that God is just waiting for me with his hands open, like I'm here when you're ready. There you go again. Come back. Like it was a tug of war. And finally I gave in, and it was just last year on my son's birthday and Halloween. My husband's cousin came over and she was like, it's not about religion. It's about finding a relationship with Jesus. That's all he wants. And when I'm getting the chills.
I
Her
didn't
mom was
you
here
just
praying.
I was like, why did I just feel like cold?
Yeah, I surrendered and I said, fine. I give up. I'm not pulling away anymore. I'm all yours. And ever since then, like, but I've always known God was always there.
Amazing. One of the other questions I had is because your dad was supposed to be a dad. He was supposed to be your covering, but instead he became like one of the worst predators because it was your dad. So when Jesus started to heal you, how did he have to rebuild like your vision of what a father actually is?
So although my father did what he did to me, I had a father figure, which was my grandfather and my uncle. My grandfather mostly, he was my best friend. He would take me, even though my whole family called him an alcoholic and whatever. I got a version of my grandfather that nobody else did. I was his apple of his eye and whatnot. He taught me everything. I would call him, and he's the only man on this planet that, besides God, that ever loved me. And before he died, he met my husband, and I told him. And before he died, like 1 week, I have a picture where my husband went to go see him. He didn't recognize me, but he recognized my husband, and he take care of my granddaughter because he didn't know I was in the room. He's like, take care of my granddaughter. I know she's in good hands with you. I can die in peace now. I get so emotional because I just had my wedding. We got married in 2022, but I just had my wedding last year. And it was really emotional for me because he wasn't there to walk me, but my brothers were there and my sons were there. And during the father-daughter dance, we played videos with my grandfather and my uncle while playing on a song, Lift Me Up. And I felt like he was there. And I know that my grandfather would be very proud because he knows that he raised me, the best that he could. And I know that he knows that my husband is there.
So I have one last question. You now are working with people re-entering from prison and coming from addiction. And a lot of times in the Christian realm, people coming out of addiction, out of prison, they are kind of just thrown to the wayside. What do you see in them when you are dealing with people, when you're meeting them, being able to spend time with them, getting to know them, they end up beginning to trust you. What are you seeing in these people that the church doesn't see?
I see, because again, I'm studying psychology, so it's like me, I had an inner child that needed to heal. I see their inner child who's trying to heal too. And like when they trust me and they tell me they open up to things, and it's like I see their pain. And although I'm not going to be the one to heal them, I'm going to be there. I'm an instrument, I'm a tool. in the little that I'm with them to help with what I can. I'm planting a seed.
Yeah. I just got right now seed planter. I was I'm like, "Okay." As you're talking, it's like seed planter. She's planting seeds, I will do the rest. She just has to plant them. I'm like, "Alright." Yeah. So that's amazing. So your history of where you came from, like, how does that allow you to discern the people that you're working with and then be able to speak or plant a seed into them through your lived experience compared to, let's say, a person who never experienced trauma, never went through drug addiction, and they're supposed to be helping people re-enter?
Yeah, so I get that a lot. When we work with a lot of ministry people through the faith-based program, and sometimes the sisters will come and ask me, "So you've already met the client, like, let me know, am I safe? Like, am I gonna be okay?" So I'm like, "Yeah, you're good. Don't worry about it. Like, I can feel when they're ready or not. I can feel it. I wouldn't just let them in my car. Like, I will let my supervisor know or something. Like, we get to meet them before they get out, so they're still in jail, and that's where we start to build the rapport. And even though there's a glass right there, it's just that connection. Like I said, I make eye contact with them, and the conversations that we have, they naturally just speak to me. Like, I always pray, Holy Spirit.
You make them feel like a human.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I just got. She makes them feel human again.
yeah.
So that's amazing. Uh, so my last wrap-up question is my signature question that I always end my podcast with, and so that is, Naniece, for the people that are listening right now who might be still in the middle of their trauma, maybe they haven't found their way out, maybe they're still stuck in addiction, maybe they're just feeling like they're drowning and they don't know what else to do. What are your words of wisdom that you can leave them with today?
Like I was sharing about the song earlier, seek the Lord will always answer. Even when you think that God's not there, God's always there with his arms wide open, just wants you to ask for the help. And I know that because, I mean, depending on the age, sometimes it's really hard to open up. And this is part of the reason why I speak on this, because I want there to be awareness that in sometimes different cultures, these things are normalized and it's not like just because one person doesn't listen to you, somebody else will. And you are loved. That's what I have to say, because I grew up feeling unloved and unworthy, but you are worthy. You are very worthy in God's eyes.
That's a beautiful thing to end it with right there. So, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your story. Thank you for being vulnerable with us, and really going into detail of the struggles that you went through. I am truly happy to have you as a sister in Christ. Welcome to the family. And I am going to keep in touch with you because I know you're destined for great things. I want to be able to see what God has in store for you and what you're doing a year from now or 2 years from now. So thank you, everyone, the Deliverance Diaries family. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Deliverance Diaries. Catch me back here next Thursday at 12 noon with another new episode. Until then, you guys stay safe out there.